now for our feature presentation.
You'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Watson, touchdown! Hunter Renfrow.
He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers. Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
A lot of old memories. Coach Spurrier used to do a Easter egg hunt, his wife Jerry with the kids out here, so I can remember my little girl that's 12 now. Collecting Easter eggs out here. And, I said I wanted to do that.
The Beamer era is in at South Carolina. Greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. They are our partners this time of year selling cars, and they're flying off the lot, so you need to head to stokesvw.com. JBandGoldwaterShow.com and the all-new JB and Goldwater app is where you can find us daily, 12 to 2 p.m. To the right of your screen is Darren Goldwater. I'm Jamie, and as I mentioned, the next couple of hours, we'll be sticking around to try to entertain you here. Shane Beamer, of course, yesterday introduced as the new officially introduced as a new head football coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks. Much more reaction to that throughout the program today across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater and individually at Sports Radio JB and at Darren Goldwater. And our phone number and our text line, they're the same thing, and it's open, 843-321-8893. And if you'd like to be a part of the program that way, you can do it certainly. Or however you're watching or listening to our program, you can send those little chats, and Darren pops them up on the screen now.
Yeah, that's right.
So there you go.
New fun game to play throughout the show.
Yeah, all the stuff that Darren does till like midnight every night while I'm getting my Z's in is good for the program. Certainly. So is David Cloninger. He'll join us at 12:30 today with the Post and Courier. Perry Orth at 1 o'clock. And ESPN's Mike Morgan will join us at 1:30 this afternoon as well. All will react to the hiring of Shane Beamer. We'll talk about the college football playoff. We do have some hoops to get into today. Jim Harbaugh.
Who knows?
Oh, boy. We'll see. Latest news is none because they canceled the press conference today.
Again.
And nobody knows why. So all that is ahead today here on the JB and Goldwater Show. And thank you all so much for watching and listening to our program every day. We've, I rarely ever pat ourselves on the back, so I'm patting you on the back. People are, I think, pretty happy with what we do around here. And I will say this, nobody in this state and nobody in the area that we broadcast from in Charleston, South Carolina has covered this better than us. I assure you of that because of the people that are involved, not just Darren and I. But thank you so much for everybody being involved in this. And it is Shane Beamer, obviously, as you all probably saw the press conference yesterday, the new head coach at South Carolina. And, Darren, here's the thing. After we've kind of now all had a little bit of time to compartmentalize many of his comments yesterday. We've had a time to kind of some time to reflect on this search, to fast forward into what the future will look like at South Carolina under his leadership. Clearly, things still needing to be sorted out. Lots of them, which players are coming, which players are going, which coaches are coming, which coaches are going, and things of that nature. This is nowhere near a finished product. This is just the tip of the iceberg for the future of Shane Beamer. Let me lead off with saying something here to the fans. All right. For the first time in all of our lifetimes, I don't care if you're 104 I don't care if you're 4, or I don't care if you're 34 like I am for the next 3 days.
Oh, you got a birthday coming up
on Saturday.
There you go.
All right. It doesn't matter how old you are. Nobody in our lifetime has ever, no coach at South Carolina has ever loved this program like the fans love it until now. And all you had to do was listen to that press conference yesterday and hear what he had to say. Shane Beamer has been infatuated with the University of South Carolina essentially since 1987. When his father brought Virginia Tech here and they were stomped 40-10 by Todd Ellis, Sterling Sharp, and the rest of that Gamecock football team, which was a pretty good football team, just a few years removed from what they call Black Magic, of course. He's told the story about Frank being interviewed by Mike McGee before they hired Lou Holtz to take over the program after the firing of Brad Scott. This is a place that's been on the Beamer radar for a while, the family Beamer radar for a while. And obviously when he spent time in Columbia, those 4 seasons under Steve Spurrier, he told the story yesterday. He mentioned to his wife, look, if we ever want to be the head coach here one day, we need to go home, coach for dad as an assistant head coach, and I'll continue to do what I need to do to make myself the best candidate I can. For when the timing's right, maybe we'll end up right back here in Columbia, South Carolina. And he did it. And here he is taking over the program. So for the fans, I hope that they all understand that this guy loves it as much as they do. And I want to add to that real quick too. And I want to tell people this, and maybe my opinion means nothing to you, and maybe it means something, and I don't know, but it's our program, so I'm going to say it. It is okay to say things like how excited you are for the future of Gamecock football. It is okay to tell your buddies we're going to win an SEC championship one day. It is okay to be inspired about what you've seen in this hire. It's okay to not be cautiously optimistic about the future of Carolina football and to be bullish on what good could come out of the hiring of Shane Beamer. It's okay. It's okay to dream. It is okay to dream because that's what he needs right now. This program has had way too much negativity around it since basically 2014 when Texas A&M beat the crap out of South Carolina to open the that season in Williams-Brice Stadium with the debut of the SEC Network. There were certainly some good things that happened. They did win 9 games in 2017 under Coach Muschamp. They've had some upsets along the way. But overall, the energy in this program and the life of this program has been sucked out over the last 6 years. People believed when Spurrier got here in 2005, and that's what Steve needed, and his staff needed that. And fans bought into it. And if you think that for 1 second that the positive energy can't overtake the negative energy that's been around this program, you're wrong. Because what we constantly see in every program in college football, Darren, is people who all have a voice now, and they shouldn't, but they have one because of things like Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. And they get on there and they want to poke fun and they want to, bash hires. And Clemson fans, I saw a bunch of them yesterday, just beating up on Shane Beamer. I saw one guy, he's happens to be a radio. I don't know how this guy has a job. He happens to be a radio host in the upstate, talking about Shane Beamer being the brown lettuce that nobody wants to eat, but you put the ranch dressing on it to make it taste a little bit better. Well, then that would have made Dabo Swinney the world's worst looking garden when he was hired in 2008, because he was a wide receivers coach that nobody wanted to be their head coach, but he happened to be the right guy for Clemson University. And on that note, by the way, Dabo Swinney said a few things yesterday that were wonderful for Shane Beamer in the future of South Carolina. And I appreciate Coach Swinney saying those things because he's right. He told Shane, you build it from the inside out. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. If Shane wants to jump in and be a positive coach, he needs to have positive fans. So before you put your fingers on the keyboard to respond to some jackass who's saying something about your new head coach or how bad you've been or whatever it is, and we're on a 6-game winning streak, or we're Florida fans, or we're Tennessee fans, or we're whoever fans, and y'all suck, don't even respond to them. Say something positive about your football program, because Shane said it 20 times yesterday in that press conference. This is your program. You people who put all the money and energy and time into this and sat your butts through the cold weather and the hot weather and the hurricanes at NC State in 1999 and the damn snowstorm that almost hit Columbia in 2014 and things like that. This is your program. Don't respond to that crap. Don't even look at it. Mute those people on social media if you want to continue to be on social media. Hit the mute button. Don't even look at it. Focus on putting positive energy into this program. Recruits see it. The team sees it. The coaches see it, and they need to see it. You can't get away from it anymore. Don't be scared to dream, because Shane Beamer is dreaming. And if you're a fan, I hope that you share those same dreams and make those same comments, because you can't get anywhere in the world without that.
It's fair to dream. You got to dream. You have to have goals. You have to have something out in front of you. You can't just sit there and expect the same old thing, because if that's your attitude, then you're going to get the same old thing. It's okay and understandable if you don't think that this was the right hire. That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. That is absolutely okay.
I don't have a problem with that.
But as a but
the hire's been made.
The hire's been made. If you're a Gamecock fan who's listening to this show, it's now not about your opinion. It's over. Shane Beamer's the guy, and it's time to move forward. Corey Miller is a guy I did a bunch of football games with back in the day when I first started doing TV. He's up in Columbia. Everyone knows who Corey Miller is.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty vocal in saying, I don't know if Shane Beamer's the right guy. He was also very vocal in saying, now that this is done, I support him wholeheartedly. He congratulated him and said it was the right thing to do to come out and to greet the lettermen who were out there for the press conference, who had to stay outside of the building. And he said, I support this wholeheartedly. I'm behind you 100%. And that's the way you move forward. If you're trying to move forward in any other way, then you're not moving forward. You're at best holding your ground.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And you're spot on with that, Darren. And we're going to play a clip here in just a moment, and it's rather lengthy, and we hope that you'll stick with us. It's about 3 minutes long. And it's Shane telling, some stories about, why he wanted to be the next head coach at South Carolina. This was his dream job. And if you're spouting off opinions out there about this hire and you didn't listen to his press conference yesterday in its entirety, you're doing it all wrong. Your opinion means nothing, because if you didn't hear what he had to say yesterday, you've never seen that before, ever. All right. And we're about to play a clip here. And he said something. He said that he said this yesterday in his press conference. He didn't try to sell himself to Ray Tanner. He just tried to be himself with Ray Tanner. And here's what happened. All these coaches that were fighting, that wanted this job, there were people who were competing for this job. Great coaches, great people, qualified coaches. Jamie Chadwell, Billy Napier, Scott Satterfield, maybe Brian Johnson down at Florida, wherever, whoever, whatever it may be. I'm speculating, but you can probably guess that there's a lot of truth in this. Many of those guys in their interview, like we all do in job interviews, are trying to sell themselves.
Yeah.
Shane Beamer exposed himself. That's what he did. He didn't try to sell himself to Ray Tanner. He exposed himself to Ray Tanner. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. And it happens to be all right here in Columbia, South Carolina. It was going to be almost impossible to beat him. And that's why Wes Mitchell and guys like J.C. Sherbert have said for the last couple of weeks, although they've been open to saying, hey, look, there's other guys who, somebody else could land this gig. They knew that essentially he exposed, because he's qualified to be the coach, he exposed his love, care, and concern for the University of South Carolina. And Ray and Bob knew that he was the guy. There's a difference in selling and exposing. Shane Beamer exposed himself, and that's why he got the job.
Exposed is one way of putting it. Opened up. It's probably the same thing. When he went into the story of when I first had the phone interview, I had all these pages scattered around on my desk, and the interview lasted for hours, and I never once looked down. That's when you know you're just speaking from the heart. That's when you know, is the interview easy per se? I don't know if it's easy, but it is. It's coming from the heart, and it is a very easy thing to discuss when that's the case, and you're not having to look down at your notes. We got a great comment here from Joshua. He said, as a quadriplegic, I've lived my life by faith and hope for the last 6 years. Being a Gamecock fan, that's what we're lived by. Never been this excited about the future. I like that one.
I love that. I love that, Josh. Thank you so much for that comment. It's a wonderful comment. It reminds me of one of my best friends, Adam Gorlitsky, who is paralyzed from the waist down, and he does the same thing every day. Here's what Shane had to say yesterday. Again, this is a couple minutes long, so we hope you'll listen to it in its entirety, and then more on the other side of this clip from Shane Beamer.
leaving here 10 years ago was extremely difficult. I told my wife, I'll never forget having this conversation, that if we ever wanted to be the head football coach at Virginia Tech, or excuse me, if I ever wanted to be the head football coach at South Carolina, I felt like we needed to leave to go to Virginia Tech at that time and then ultimately come back. And I don't know if she believed me or not, but she went along, and we've worked for 10 years to get back to this place, this special place. And baby, we did it. We're back. But the dream doesn't end there. We're just getting started. But so thankful that you're my best friend, my partner throughout this. I'm sad you're not here today, but I can't wait to see you back in Norman. And then to my 3 children, Sutton, Olivia, and Hunter. You guys are going to be seeing a lot of them. They're going to be completely invested into this athletics program. We're going to be at every sporting event you can think of. We're going to be supporting Coach Staley, Coach Martin, all the different sports here at Carolina. We're excited about that. I was telling Coach Tanner in my interview process, my son, he's 7, for the last 2 weeks, that he knew about this opportunity. He knew about Carolina. Every single night when I came home, they would text me, "See, are you close to home?" I said, "Yeah, I'm about 5 minutes away." And lo and behold, every single night when I walked in the house, Sandstorm would be blaring in our kitchen, and my 7-year-old would be waving his T-shirt above his head. So no pressure at all on that one. But it was pretty cool to see when this thing came to fruition late Saturday night. I've still got some old Carolina clothes that I had from my time here. My kids put those on. They're excited about it and can't wait to get them over here. Like I said, we're just getting started. I've had opportunities in my career to be a head football coach, but I've been in some great places along with some great coaches. And I wasn't going to leave just to go check a box to say that I was a head coach. It would have had to have been really, really special. The places that I've worked, the coaches that I've worked for, made that really, really hard to ever leave. But this is a dream job for me because you have everything in place to win here at the University of South Carolina. A state that I was born in, that I'm so proud to be a native of, the state of South Carolina. An amazing elite university here with unbelievable academics and great leadership. A growing state and a growing city that I'm excited about raising our family in, this amazing city of Columbia, South Carolina. The facilities here, so much has changed in the 10 years since I left, but the facilities here are second to none. I've coached at a lot of different places. I've visited a lot of different schools, and the infrastructure that we have here from a facility standpoint, this building, Williams-Brice Stadium, everything that's continuing to grow, it's exciting to have those resources to be able to recruit here. The amazing fan base at the University of South Carolina. One of my earliest memories, my dad was the head coach at Murray State out in Murray, Kentucky, FCS program. He took the head coaching job at Virginia Tech in 1987. And one of my first memories to big-time college football was coming down here to a game at Williams-Brice and seeing Todd Ellis, who I so appreciate being here today, quarterback at the University of South Carolina, seeing Sterling Sharp out there, all the great players that he played against. Obviously, it didn't go well for Virginia Tech, but I just remember being blown away by the fan base, the size of Williams-Brice Stadium, just something about the Williams-Brice Stadium and the electricity in the air in those times down here, and it's always resonated with me. This is a job my dad spent time coaching in Charleston, South Carolina at the Citadel, and one thing that he always talked about during his entire career was how much he would love if the opportunity ever presented itself to be the head football coach at South Carolina himself. I still remember, God bless him, but I still remember Mike McGee coming to Blacksburg, Virginia, and sitting in our kitchen and interviewing my dad at one time about being the head coach at South Carolina. So that opportunity never transpired with him, but the fact that I'm standing here today is really, really cool, and things have certainly come full circle.
There you go. Shane Beamer, part of what he had to say yesterday, and you could just hear it. This has been in the works for some time, at least in Shane Beamer's mind, to come back and lead the South Carolina football program. And that's all. I mean, that's powerful stuff. And that's what I was kind of talking about before we played that clip there, Darren, is that, you know, he exposed his love and admiration for this university when he met with Coach Tanner, and most importantly, to Bob Caslin. Ray's known Shane for a long time.
That's right.
All right. I mean, Shane's been on Ray's radar. Let's not act like this is brand new. It's not. But not Bob. Bob, you know, just got hired last year. I mean, he's the new president at South Carolina, and you got to sell him too. And he didn't try to sell him at all. He just tried to tell him, hey, look, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. And I think the future of South Carolina football is in really good hands. Again, I'm going to say this one more time. Don't respond to those that don't want to hear your positivity. It's okay to be positive right now. There's nothing wrong with being positive. The people that want to live in the negative crap every day, the Carolina fans that still don't believe in this, if there are a few out there, and there are fans of other fan bases, it doesn't matter what they think. I'm telling you again, the whole Dabo thing, and I know people are tired of hearing it. I'm not comparing Shane to Dabo. I'm talking what Dabo did. I didn't, you didn't, and 90% of the Clemson fan base didn't buy into what Dabo Swinney had to sell for the longest time, especially when he was getting his rear end beat every year by South Carolina. But guess what? He started from the inside. He worked his way out. Here they are. It all worked out. He didn't care what the outside world had to think. Shane Beamer doesn't either. And the fans who want to believe in this and they want to be positive, and in the past, when you're positive in social media, you get the detractors who have something snarky to say, mute them, forget about it, move on. Eventually you'll drown that crap out and you'll move in the right direction. And that's what he's trying to do.
I believe it was Matt Connolly at the State who put out a couple of tweets yesterday. And to a large degree, I agree with what he was saying, that to say this is the next Dabo Swinney, look, that's tough because you got a ways to go before you're in that upper echelon of all-time greats. And that's where Dabo now sits and will sit for a long time. But he said the way Beamer is talking, the way he presents himself, the way he's obviously going to sell the program, it's as much like Dabo as we've seen since Dabo. And I think that's a pretty good way of comparing it, because we talked a lot about, is this going to be a resume hire or a fit? Is it the best resume, the best coach on paper, or the best coach for South Carolina because he fits here? And you've made the point abundantly clear, and you're right. And coming from a Carolina fan, it means more. You saying that Carolina isn't this national brand that can just sell itself. It's not. It could get to that point, but it's not there. So you need someone who can rejuvenate the fan base. You need someone who can sell this thing, and you need someone with honest to goodness passion about where he is and what he's doing and what he's selling. Because if you try and sell someone something and you don't believe in it,
that's right.
You can't sell it.
You can't sell it.
It's why I walked away from a job 10, 15 years ago, because I was being told to sell something. I didn't think it worked. I didn't believe in the product anymore. And I said, I can't sell this.
Yeah.
It's the same with recruiting. If you don't believe it, if you don't love it, how are you going to sit there and convince a kid over Zoom to come to South Carolina?
Right.
It's not going to work. It's got to come from the heart. And that's why I'm very willing to give this thing a little bit of time and see the improvements and the advancements that he can make and how quickly he can do it.
Well, it's not much different, honestly. So I'm just going to give a personal example here, but my wife, all right, she's not from the state of South Carolina. I grew up in this state. I'm from right here in Mount Pleasant. I've been here my whole life. Our family's been invested in the University of South Carolina our whole life and things like that. But, when we met, and she realized quickly, like, man, this is something that they're like truly passionate about. And like, she'd been in South Carolina at that point in time for, I think, 9 years or something. But, it's cool, but I don't really know much about it. But as she spent more time with me, she became me. Like, this is important. This is valuable. And it became a part of her. Like, it was in my culture. It's now us together and things like that. But I didn't try to convince her. It was just, this is what we do, and I want you to be a part of this with me. And in a very different way, but you can hopefully understand the similarities from a mental standpoint. That's who Shane is going to be moving forward as he tries to get kids to come play football at Carolina, because he's not going to be a coach who has to walk in and convince somebody that he came to South Carolina for any other reason than that's exactly where he wanted to be. He's not going to have to necessarily sell himself as to why he's coaching at South Carolina. They're going to already understand that, because it's going to almost sweat out of him.
Yeah, it oozes out of him. You can see it. Yes.
Like, that's Coach Swinney has done that. Kirby Smart has done that at Georgia. And there's other, Mac Brown's been doing that at North Carolina. He's always felt very, very strongly about the University of North Carolina, where he once was a coach, right? And you don't always have these examples, because generally this is a coaching, this is a business. And so you hire, the best coach for your program. You hire the best coach that's available. There's a bunch of stuff that goes into these type of things. But, Ray Tanner hired the guy that thinks like Ray Tanner. Honestly, that's what he did. I've known Ray. I've known Ray a long time. All right. Coach Tanner is a great man who loves South Carolina. He had opportunities to leave to go coach other major baseball programs. He didn't do it. He's had opportunities to leave since. He didn't do it. He just not everybody knows about all this. Like, this isn't all public stuff.
No.
Everything doesn't go public, guys. But Coach Tanner has believed in South Carolina since he was hired by Mike McGee in late 1996 or 1995, one of those years. I can't remember now. Sorry, Coach. But not trying to age you or anything like that. But he knew that this guy, he's qualified to be the coach, and he knew that when he went and sat in the living room, it would come out of him naturally how important it is, the University of South Carolina, and why you should be a part of it. And Ray did that forever with baseball. People knew when Coach walked if he came to your locker room or if you went to visit him, Ray didn't have to convince you. You talking to him convinced you that this is where I need to play baseball. My God, this is incredible. Shane is going to have something very similar moving forward. And that's for the first time ever. And, we'll talk about some differences and things like that as time goes on. We do have David Cloninger coming up next, and Perry Orth and Mike Morgan. But, one of the things I think, and God bless Will Muschamp and his family. I hope they have a Merry Christmas. And if you're a fan, don't be mad about anything that happened here under him. It's not like he wasn't trying to win, guy. I mean, it didn't work out. Wish him the best and thank him for his time. But one of the differences here is Shane. Will was always in a program that could recruit itself.
Mm-hmm.
And at South Carolina, the pitch has to be a little different. That's why I worked for Spurrier. And let's keep something in mind with Spurrier. He was at Florida. He was at Duke. He was at South Carolina. Everybody goes, yeah, but look, he was at Florida. Well, Florida sucked before Steve got there. It was terrible. They were awful. They were worse than South Carolina. But Steve went and convinced this first group of kids that you can be the first to do this, that, and the other. And then that built a culture, a winning culture. And that's what happened. And Steve did the same thing at South Carolina, but he didn't have the right guys in place afterwards to sustain that. One of those who helped build that was Shane Beamer. So he understands a little bit differently. Steve and Shane have a similar thinking in how to build a program like South Carolina, maybe more against Will, who Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Florida, Texas, these places where they're going to naturally walk in. They were worried about going to the NFL and things like that. That mentality doesn't translate to a blue collar program like South Carolina, where you're going to have to do more with less.
Bingo. More with less. That's exactly where I was going. So we've talked about more with less for a couple of weeks. I think JC was the first one to really coin the phrase, if you want to say that. But we've talked about it now for a while. And are we saying more with less from a facility standpoint? No, because
no, not at all.
From that standpoint, it's there. Right. From that standpoint, it is there. The groundwork, the architecture of the program, if you will, it is in place. When you're talking more with less, now you're talking about the brand, the exposure. How do you sell a program that isn't one of the national brands?
Right.
That's more with less. How do you succeed when you're in Fayetteville, Arkansas?
Right.
Sam Pittman.
Look what Sam's doing.
That's more with less, right? I mean, that's not a national brand, but that is a passionate dude who loves the Razorbacks. It's the only job he wants, and he is selling that program, and he is turning that program around. That's what we're talking about, more with less. It's not facilities. It's not resources.
Right.
It's selling something that isn't necessarily, the hot commodity.
Yeah. And that's not to say either that it's always going to be that way. You hope that it's not always that way. Eventually more with less becomes more with more. That's what Clemson is now. Clemson is more with more. They recruit the best out there, but they still have to find the right fit. But when those kids get there, they need to understand what their role is within that program, because everybody around them is elite.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in time at South Carolina, that's not the case. Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, the Georgias of the world, they're the more with more schools. Look, we're going to recruit more, but you guys, we're competing with 5 or 6 other programs in the country right now. You have to do more than those guys. They're all elite kids. You have to do more. For South Carolina to get on that level, you have to have a guy who understands how to get more out of somebody that might not be as talented collectively as some of these schools that they're going to be competing with. And Shane certainly understands that. And he mentioned much of that yesterday.
More with less. That's what Dog and Duck was. They're not some big national brand, but now they're the best because they've got 3 locations: Bell Hall, Park West, Clements Ferry Road. All sorts of contests going on in terms of their Christmas decorations and stuff. Plus, you can bring pajamas and warm clothes to donate. Dog and Duck, 3 locations here in Mount Pleasant.
And a bunch of good games coming up the next couple of weekends, and the game day burger is wonderful at the Dog and Duck. All right, time for a timeout. DC, he's pretty good himself. David Cloninger with the Post and Courier set to join us when the JB and Goldwater show, protected by McFadden Pest Control, returns.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
This is former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth, and you're listening to my friends JB and Goldwater.
All right, 12:32, Tuesday, December the 8th. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show. I mentioned our friends at McFadden Pest Control for 40 years in the business here in the Low Country of South Carolina. You should check them out, McFaddenPestControl.com. Don't let those critters come in when it's cold this time of year. McFadden Pest Control, make sure they're gone, and the termites, and in the spring when it heats up, the mosquitoes as well. I use them for all 3. You should too. McFaddenPestControl.com. Tell my friend Heath, he's a wonderful, wonderful man. And for you Carolina fans, he's a big Gamecock fan, but don't worry, they don't discriminate. They service everybody. Tell them we said hello, certainly, whenever you hire them for their services. We've hired David Cloninger for his services today. Yesterday, though, he did not get the first question to Shane Beamer.
Or the second.
But he didn't get the last one, though. I don't think that's a sign of things to come by any stretch of the imagination. But DC has been kind enough to join us here on a brisk Tuesday in the state of South Carolina. Hey, man.
How's it going, Jeremy?
Well, we have a coach, so that's good. What do you do now? Is it on to the makeup of the soccer team, or what comes next?
Well, I mean, obviously that's the big news, and I really do like how it went down. I was anticipating a Sunday driving home from Kentucky, checking my phone every 5 minutes,
Sure.
seeing if it was imminent. But really, let me break it down to, I was in the middle of finalizing a story after Scott Satterfield pulled out on Saturday night. And we were going to run a story that said, here's the 4 finalists. The decision could come Sunday night. Here's the strength, here's the weaknesses, all 4 guys. Well, it's about 6 minutes toward the end of the game. My game story was already written up ahead of time because, pretty much everyone knows USC wasn't going to win. So that was done. And then there's the tweet from Billy Napier. I'm not interested. I want to stay here and build a program in Louisiana. So then it was like, oh, okay. Well, knowing what I knew, it was like, all right, it was between him and Shane. And Shane's going to say yes. So if Billy says no, then it's Shane. So tore up that story, started writing Shane Beamer is expected to be the next coach. Right then I got a phone call from a guy who's been instrumental to me during this search and said, it's done. They're going to go get him tomorrow and bring him back to Columbia. So then changing that around and, of course, putting that in place. So I was actually glad that it happened that way And in reference to your next question, now it's just a case of which coaches are going to be here, which coaches are going to leave, which players are going to be here, which players are going to leave.
Right.
And I think the story is actually up right now. Is there anything to a bowl game for South Carolina?
Mm-hmm.
So just check that out on the Post and Courier website, and hopefully they'll answer all your questions.
Yeah, that's certainly an interesting topic. I've never in my life seen a 2-8 team headed to a bowl game, but the SEC doesn't want them turning those opportunities down. We'll circle back to that. I do, though. The press conference yesterday, look, DC, you've been covering this team a long time. You're from this state. You've been around Gamecock football literally your whole life, like many of us out there. We've never seen anything like this. I mean, South Carolina has hired some great coaches in their time. Obviously Spurrier and Lou, and you go back to Joe Morrison and things like that. Certainly it's all evolved with technology and stuff. A little bit different how they do things now as opposed to 30 years ago and stuff like that. But there's never been a guy who has stepped up to the podium and just exposed himself and his infatuation and love for the University of South Carolina. And I've been saying this, the fans finally have somebody who cares about the university and loves it as much as they do. So what were your impressions yesterday with Shane? It looked like they were all a little shaky and tired from this process, but just your first impressions of the next HBC.
Well, that's right, Jamie. I mean, obviously his love and passion for USC came out. That was the big reason why he was pretty much immediately at the top of the candidate list back on November 15th when Will Muschamp got fired. They knew that Shane wanted the job. They knew that there were a lot of other people they could have who were also interested in the job. And through the interview process, and nothing against those other candidates, but it was a thing of like, well, Shane's got his weaknesses too. He's never been a head coach. He's never been a coordinator, but he wants to be here. And can any of that, be trumped by something another candidate brings to the table? And the answer clearly was no. So Shane is a guy that wants to be here. He loves to be here. He's going to do everything he can to make this program win. I tried to take a step back during the press conference, as impressive as it was, because I said, I've been around a lot of, guys who won the press conference. Darren Horn won the press conference.
Sure.
And obviously it didn't work out. That being said, yesterday was different because things have been just so bad for football for the past 2 years. And because the men's basketball team and the baseball team haven't exactly been lighting the world on fire either, those are your three most visible sports. And it's all kind of contributed to this malaise about what's going on down here, especially when other close by programs are having a lot of success. So yesterday gave hope. Yesterday gave optimism to a fan base that desperately needed it. And the best thing about it, Jamie, is that it carries on pretty much all the way to next September.
Yep.
That's when the next football season will start. And that's when the only thing that Shane Beamer will really be judged on, wins and losses, will come into play. Right now, he's 0-0. And everything's great, and everything's going to be a bright day. And right now, everyone's accepting, like, well, it might be kind of rough at first, but he'll get in where. And that's all fine. That'll be what's talked about until the next September, until there's actually a game to play. So the best part is that gets a lot of fans who just needed some kind of good feeling through a whole long stretch up until the start of next football season, because honestly, that's what's been missing these past 2 years. There just hasn't been a lot of good there, not a lot to hope for, and now they have that.
I totally agree. And, I think one of the most important comments that he made yesterday, DC, was that he was going to surround himself with people that have the same vision that he does. And he has a lengthy, he has a fairly deep vision for South Carolina. And I love the fact that he really went back 33 years essentially in his life and telling stories, 1987, that 40-10 game with Sterling and Todd. And, when Frank was interviewed for the job by Coach McGee and things like that. I think people, maybe if they were on the fence about this hire, David, maybe started to realize that Shane Beamer and the family in general has long had South Carolina in their sights, let alone just the 4 years that he spent under Coach Spurrier.
Oh, man, and that's a big thing, Jamie. I mean, of course, a lot of people, again, everybody was going to have their criticisms just because you can't please everybody. I think we all know that. And, of course, in the age we live in, it's always going to be your first reaction is what you're really thinking, because you want to go ahead and say that instead of stepping back and thinking about it. Shane obviously hasn't had the experience some of the other guys had. And of course, a big question I was getting on Saturday night when I put it out, Shane Beamer is going to be the guy. He's going to be in town tomorrow. They're going to introduce him tomorrow evening. They're saying, I can't believe that people were just tuning out that Coastal Carolina BYU game and ignoring a coach that South Carolina could have in exchange for the easy one. I'm like, well, look, nothing against Jamie Chadwell. I mean, he's a great candidate. He's a great coach. They're doing great things down in Conway. But Shane was the guy that they had set their sights on. And wasn't going to be a case of one game was going to make the difference, So it was a case of everybody, looked at it and said, he's got support. I think a lot of people know him. And for anybody who's on the fence, that like you said, that press conference probably changed their minds a little. And that's great for right now. But it's just going to, it's going to last until the start of next football season. And then we'll see how things start going, because you do have to take a step back, Jamie, and say, well, it's all in the manner of how you look at it. For instance, these past 3 weeks with football results, we've been applauding the Gamecocks' effort, and it has been great. They have not quit. They had every excuse in the world to mail it in, but they didn't. They fought, and they played for that name on their jersey. That's impressive. Well, if they'd have done that when Muschamp was still the coach, would we have heard about it? Not a bit.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Not one bit.
No.
But because he was gone, it's like, oh, okay. So really, it does come full circle to where you're kind of back in that early days of the Spurrier era, where he said, don't be cheering us when we lose.
Yeah.
Now, that's not the kind of thing we want to do around here. But because you just needed to have something new to look at, something hopeful there. So that's what Shane Beamer brings in. I mean, obviously, I think he'll do a tremendous job, but his hire was always going to be dependent on who he hires.
Mm-hmm.
His success is going to be dependent on who he gets in here as his coordinators, who he gets in here as his assistant coaches, and the recruits that he could get. And obviously, right now, that's the biggest question. Because if you look at the roster like I do, there's not a lot known there. The guys that you're dependent on are probably leaving for the NFL or, take other opportunities, what have you. The recruiting class is threadbare right now. And who knows what you're going to be able to get between now and December 16th, from December 16th to February, from February to the summer. There's just no telling. So you look at that from a standpoint and say, boy, who's going to go out there and win these games next year? Because you don't even know. But right now, it's just there's a new guy in charge, and he wants to be here. And now pretty much everything starts over. And, of course, this all lasts until there's a game to play. But that's a long, long time from now.
David Cloninger's with us. You mentioned going back to the Spurrier era. You mentioned who's going to be on staff, and we don't know. Tim Frisbee sent us a note and said, could Spurrier Jr. be on staff, because he's followed at least a similar path to Beamer?
I love Tim. I think I can answer this one for David. No, but
I'll throw it out there. Is it possible?
That's not going to happen.
No,
there you go.
That will not happen.
That's not. Yeah. We'll leave that there, DC. Let's move on
there
to talk about golf. No, but as it pertains to the staff, though, so Will Muschamp has good coaches on his staff, and there's some that aren't going to be back. I know that he didn't want to confirm some of this yesterday. I can't remember who asked him. Maybe might have been Kornblut, might have been you. I don't know. But Kyle,
I think it was Phil.
Was it Phil? Okay, yeah. So Kyle Krantz and T. Rob are not returning. We know that,
right?
But there are some other guys who could be returning. I think it's all everybody's expected to hear at some point that Connor Shaw will probably be back. And then there's some other names out there: Rod Wilson, Mike Peterson. I'd keep a close eye on him and some of his relationships with players on that team, guys. Des Kitchings, Mike Bobo. There's some really good names here that are on this staff that could be. But I mentioned a little bit ago, DC, that he's looking for guys who share his vision. So I guess it's a matter of, I mean, this is really interesting, right? You got I don't even know how to explain this question. You got guys who are qualified on staff. You got guys who are going to be still coaching forever because of the pandemic, and you probably can't get them in soon. You got the signing period. You got another signing period. You got the transfer portal. He's got a hell of a job to put together this staff that all thinks similar to him.
It's going to be very tough, Jamie, and that's the main thing, especially when he's pulling double duty the next couple of weeks by staying with Oklahoma and doing at least the next two games and then trying to do this at the same time. So I believe in looking at it, he looked at the two coordinators on staff, which were T-Rob and Kyle Krantz, and said, I know I'm going to be bringing in different guys. I mean, he might take the special teams himself, but I think that we all knew that he was probably going to bring in at least another defensive coordinator. So those are two guys that you hate to do it, but it was necessary to do. So those two guys were probably not going to be retained in any case. Now with Mike Bobo, it's a case of like, well, Shane Beamer's not going to coach the bowl game if they go to one. So they're going to need somebody to do that. That could be Mike Bobo. I'm of the opinion that Mike Bobo didn't do a bad job this year.
No.
I know that South Carolina didn't win a lot and didn't look good doing it, but offensively, I don't think it was their fault. I think mostly it was defense. Yes, I know that there's deserved criticism for sticking with Colin Hill as long as he did, but if you kind of look at it, what did Colin Hill do besides not be very mobile in the pocket? I can't blame him for not completing a lot of passes when they had no wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not Mike Bobo's fault. Mike Bobo at least had sense enough to say, that Kevin Harris guy's pretty good. Let's give him the ball. And he responded with 1,100 yards. So you got to give him credit for that. The run blocking was really good. The pass blocking, not so much. He got some good production from Nick Muse, a guy like Adam Prentice who did what he was supposed to do as a blocking fullback. So it really wasn't that bad considering what he walked into. And I would think that, don't look at it as a case of saying, well, if I can't go get another OC, I've got one already. You can't look at it like that. But you say, look at the guys that you could feasibly have as new OCs and see if Mike's better than them. You'll have to make that judgment. But I think that Mike obviously has a year on his contract. He'd love to stay. The administration is not going to touch this in any way. They'll say, Shane, you hire who you want. You hire who you want. It's your staff. But that being said, I'm sure they wouldn't mind if he wanted to keep Bobo on for another year in whatever capacity, just because he's already on contract. So you look at that and say, okay, well, there's going to be some decisions made there. And at least outside of Travaris Robinson and Kyle Krantz right now, he's told all the coaches, just hold on. Let's just wait a couple weeks. Let's see how things develop, and then we'll go from there. That gives Shane some time to, go and talk to anybody who he might have already talked to, who might still have their season going and saying, are you interested in coming here? Or saying like, well, this guy actually did a pretty good job this year. But he said it yesterday, and you just said it earlier. I would fully anticipate there will be some guys held over. Now, in what roles, I couldn't say right now. But there will be some guys from this staff that do return next year. Well, I can promise you that.
And, David Cloninger on Twitter at DCPNC, one thing that's interesting, though, is this isn't going to stop any of these guys from taking another job. Like, they have to do what's best for their families, too, right? That could happen.
Sure, absolutely. And, I think that a lot of them, once Will was fired on November 15th, they started looking around.
Right.
I mean, of course, they finished their jobs here first, but that's part of the business. And I know it's real easy to be like, well, they should be loyal and stay there. And that, there is something to that. You do need to be loyal to your commitments, but these guys also got families. And, I know that the business is like this and you have to get into it. And the old saying is you get hired to get fired in coaching. But, you do have to remember that these guys have families. You do have to remember it's like, well, this is why I came here and I rented a place instead of buying one or decided to build a house. I mean, this is the things that you have to realize when you're a coach. So those guys have probably got some lines in the water. And, it wouldn't be a surprise to see, in the next couple of weeks be like, okay, well, I'm moving on. So that's what will be happening over the next 2 weeks. But right now, everything's kind of holding better.
Yeah, and generally too, David, we see a lot of times when you have these major coaching changes in sports, not just in football, but in other sports as well. It's best to just cut clean and then move forward with a different staff. But this is a little bit of a different dynamic, I think, here, because I think Shane's going to have to figure out who some of the guys are on this staff who are actually more loyal to the program, like you said, and want to be here. The guys that were loyal to Coach Muschamp, or the guys that just kind of took the next opportunity, which I don't think generally Will was looking for those guys either. I think he was finding guys who really did want to be at South Carolina, and he certainly has guys there. I mean, guys who played at South Carolina, like Connor and Rod and things like that. But it will be a fascinating puzzle almost to put together for Shane over the next, I'd say, month, maybe even longer than that. And also I would credit Coach Beamer here, because I think we've all thought, DC, correct me if I'm wrong here, but oh gosh, hopefully this hire is done sooner than later so we can get a staff in place, they can recruit kids and stuff. He's actually doing it the opposite. He's taking his time on this.
Exactly. And, that's really what he has to do. He's going to be going, he's back in Oklahoma right now. He'll be helping prepare the Sooners for the next 2 games. And there is the thing about that, because of the state of what we're in, because technology, what he is, he can do both jobs at once from no matter where he is. I know there were some people who are like, well, I think he should be here with his boots on the ground because he's here now and he should do everything here. Well, there's some thought to that, but right now it's not like he can see any recruits in person. It's not like he can really see the players in person because they're all gone. So there's nothing he can't do here that he can't do in Norman. So that's what he's doing right now. And that goes with coaches too, potential assistant coaches. And, he's not going to rock the boat any or cast a bad light on himself or this program by trying to go get an assistant coach while their season is still going on. I mean, a lot of names out there, but the one thing all those names have in common is all of them are still playing. I mean, USC is one of the rare schools that played their schedule as planned and are done right now.
Right.
So there's a whole lot of games still left to play for a whole lot of teams, and that's affecting, the recruiting stuff and the roster here and the coaching search. So he'll be able to take his time, and that's good. Because generally they wanted to have a head coach in place by the December signing period. They did that. The assistant coaches, yes, they are important, but you also need to have just saying, here's the guy going to be in charge. And if a recruit calls the position coach who was recruiting and says, coach, you're going to be there, at least right now they can say, look, I'm here now. I haven't been told I'm leaving. So I know that's not the most ideal thing to have, but that's just the reality of the situation.
For the first time ever, David, I think that the 2021 football team, in addition to the guys that are on the roster now, and maybe some who are thinking about transferring after seeing Shane yesterday are thinking twice about that. But for the first time ever, the transfer portal, I believe, is going to be more important to South Carolina than the recruiting class this year. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, I think so, Jamie, just because right now, what are they down to 10 recruits for the class? 6 of them already decommitted.
Right.
And, you had a transfer in Micaiah Scott who's already committed to Georgia Tech. So you have to look at that and say, look, you're just going to have to get somebody. You got to get somebody to be on the field. So that's where your JUCOs come in. That's where your transfer portal comes in. So it's been popping a lot lately, not here, but the transfer portal around college football. And the rule of that portal is that once your name's in there, it's open season. You can be contacted by anybody. So I'm sure that's going on right now because, they've got to have guys. They dressed 53 scholarship guys for Kentucky. 53. And they had 14 walk-ons up there with them. And some of those walk-ons played a lot. So a lot of that's because of injuries. Okay. Some of that was because of COVID. Okay. But the main thing is it's not so much that game, it's going forward. How many of these kids will be back? How many kids will say, well, I signed to play for Coach Muschamp and he's not here anymore? And there will be a few of those. So you just have to take it as it comes and say, all right, look, you'd rather have too many than not enough. So just go out and I know you don't want to have to do it, but you're just going to have to take some flyers. You can't do as much deep diving and research on a recruit right now as you normally would like to, because right now you just have to have bodies on the roster. And it's not ideal, but that's what they have to do.
Brett McMurphy is just put out his bowl projections, David, and God, he's got South Carolina projected against Tulsa in the Birmingham Bowl.
All right.
On New Year's Day. All right. Okay. I guess, if you want to go watch a bowl game, it's better than the day after Christmas, even though Tampa is nicer than Birmingham,
just
Alabama. He did mention yesterday, Shane did, that he thought it would be good for South Carolina to play in a bowl game. I think the question I have for that, DC, is will South Carolina have enough coaches and players to play in one?
Well, that's the question too, Jamie, and I'm sure that the SEC is going to encourage all their teams to take that bowl slot. And I know that all the teams want to kind of repay that loyalty and say, all right, we'll go. Even if you've had a bad season, even if, there's probably not looking good for you to go down there and win the game, even if there's not going to be any fans there. But there is reality to face. And if you don't have a roster because of COVID or because of injuries or because you've had a coaching change and a bunch of kids left, well, how can you do it? It would come to a case of like, hey, we'd love to help you guys out. We just can't do it. Just cannot do it. So it's still to be determined. I mean, first of all, South Carolina's got to get an invitation, which they haven't. Projections are fine. And I know those guys talk to the bowl commission. That's fine. But it is going to be a case of like, well, right now you do have to look at the bowl slots. The SEC has 9, not counting the big boys, the New Year's Six. So you figure that, okay, well, Alabama and Florida are in the championship game. One of those goes to the playoff. One of those goes to the New Year's Six. You'll probably have another SEC team in the New Year's Six, either an A&M or Georgia, maybe both. And then you've got a bunch of other bowls. And right now, pretty much the only team that's kind of out of consideration is Vanderbilt because they're 0-8.
Shucks.
But those other teams right above them, Mississippi State, Tennessee, South Carolina, they've all got 2 wins. Now, Tennessee and Mississippi State still got games to play. South Carolina does not. So who knows how the win total will look? Because while everybody's eligible, you might have to look and say, okay, well, I don't know if we can take a 2-win team over a 3-win team. And also, I think geography will be involved. I mean, saying like, well, I mean, if it's closer to send South Carolina to Tampa, do we really want to invite Tennessee to Tampa? A lot that goes into the bowl selection process year after year is, do fans travel? Well, that's not a consideration this year because I don't know if any of these bowls will actually be able to have any fans. And the ones that do, you're not going to be able to go down there for a week like you normally would. Go down there 4 days for the game, have a good time in Ybor City, have a good time on the Strip in Nashville. You can't do that this year. Pretty much what it'll be is all fan activities are canceled. They may have attendance at the game, but for the teams involved, you practice at home. You fly down there the day before the game, sleep in a hotel, go play the game, come on home. That's what it's going to be. So there's a whole lot to figure in besides just, well, can they go? But the main thing that will have to be said before anything is you're invited. Can you make it? And even then, Jamie, I mean, let's just say they do, and they're getting ready to get on the plane and head down to wherever, and the other team calls us, hey, we can't do it.
Right.
So there's way too much unknown about this to say like, oh, well, South Carolina will definitely accept or South Carolina will definitely decline. It's unknown right now. The only thing that you can say for certainty is that there's been no invitation extended, and they'll just have to see what happens or the state of the team when that invitation comes, if it ever does.
I would like to note I have spent time both on the Strip in Nashville and in Ybor City, and they're both equally a good time. So let's move on.
Both better than Birmingham.
I noticed you didn't say anything about Birmingham, which I'm fully in agreement with. That is the most miserable I've ever been in my entire life.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Birmingham, but at least around the ball, it's just a dump. They ran out of pizza, man. It was the Papa John's Bowl, and it was cold, and they ran out of pizza. All right, real quick here. I have spent time in T-Town and in Auburn, though. Alabama is a good state. Real quick here, before we let you run, the conclusion, obviously, the regular season is concluded for South Carolina football. As you look back, 2-8. I know I'm not talking about the record itself. I'm talking about the fact that they are 2-8. They played 10 games. When you think about the job that Clint Haggart and Ray Tanner and Will Muschamp and his staff, everybody at South Carolina, for that matter, the SEC, but particularly in Columbia, because that's the conversation we're having. You think back about their efforts this year to get this season in its entirety, the players. How do you view that? What would you, when you look back at this in a year or two, what are you going to say? Is it unbelievable that happened?
Well, absolutely it is. And it's not just because of the precautions USC took and the buy-in that their players took, which is remarkable. Those guys did what they had to do, but the fact that none of the other teams on the schedule had to do it. Because you could do everything that you could as a school, and you could get through it like South Carolina did, but it was always going to be dependent on the other team. I mean, we've seen it obviously all throughout this season in the SEC. We just had another postponement yesterday with Ole Miss and A&M, and, you've had to have those. And sometimes games weren't called off until the Thursday before you were supposed to leave. And as we found out in the ACC, sometimes games aren't called off until the other team's in the locker room getting ready to play. And it's like, oh, by the way, we can't play today. You guys go on home. So it really is remarkable that USC was able to avoid all that on their end, but that's just their plan and their kids being, conducive to it. But the other part was just sheer luck that none of the other teams ever had to do that. So it was definitely a hats off to Clint Haggard and his staff and George Wynn and the guys that helped that come together. It was just a case of with the other teams, well, okay, you guys had your COVID issues, but it never happened before you were about to play South Carolina. So, that's kind of good, kind of bad. I mean, who knows? It's just like, but USC was able to get through it on schedule, and they were able, because they had to have a coaching change, they were able to get that taken care of quickly as well.
David Cloninger with the Post and Courier, DC. We know I don't even really want to ask you what's going to be in the paper this week. I'm sure you're working on a ton of stuff, and we'll just have to see where it all lands because news can continue to break. I guess that's right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's no slow days on it, so it's just going to be a case of when. Yeah. And, of course, with Twitter and Instagram and everything else being what it is, you never can tell when some 20-year-old's going to be over there and saying, you know what, I'm decided to opt out or transfer. And, that's when I think, well, I guess I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing and do this. So, but that's the deal. It's a coaching change. There's a whole lot of things that come out of this. So Shane Beamer's hire was just the first stone thrown in the lake. Now you got to start looking where all the ripples are. So that's the deal. That's the job. Fully prepared for it, and we'll just see what happens. So far, not much of anything, but that's so far. And the kids are still in exams right now. The last day of exams is the 14th. We'll see what happens after that.
Make sure you're subscribed to the Post and Courier online, or make sure it's dropped off in your driveway. And you are also following David on Twitter at DCPNC. A remarkable job, DC, over the last few weeks in covering this search for South Carolina. The future of Gamecock football is here, and you'll be all over it, and we know that. Looking forward to talking to you next week so we can start to get some basketball into the conversation as well. Gamecocks, both ladies and men on the court. Tough weekend tough loss against NC State last week for the ladies, but I think Don corrected that rather quickly. So interested to get your comments moving forward on both of those programs. We thank you so much, brother. Have a wonderful week.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, David Cloninger, Post and Courier. Time for a timeout. National anthem up next when we return. Perry Orth, former quarterback at Carolina, called out specifically yesterday by Shane Beamer. We'll let him tell you that story when we return.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Cloninger, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston, Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Low Country. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Low Country. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Cloninger, and Vietnam experience. and we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now it is my honor to present the national anthem.
Show. Live, loud, and online.
106, welcome back to JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. Download the all-new JB and Goldwater app and also jbandgoldwatershow.com. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening to our program. Thanks to David Cloninger there in that last segment. Mike Morgan from ESPN and the SEC Network up next at 1:30. But now, Darren to the right of the screen, I'm to the left, and right smack dab in the middle is our friend Perry Orth, former quarterback at South Carolina and current 4A state champion in the state of South Carolina. But Perry, you don't need a trophy to be a champion in my book, my friend. But congratulations nonetheless.
Thank you, Scott.
Sorry, we have the
go away.
Hold on, Darren is
I don't know how long it lasts.
Darren has a studio
I have a new toy, and it goes on for a while, apparently.
Yeah.
There you go.
Darren had a studio audience. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, man, it was one of the best days of my life. Honestly, I can say that. I've been on staff at Flora, and I volunteer. Obviously do the insurance full time, but AC Flora is right next to my office. And so when Justin Curtis got hired last spring, I asked if he needed a quarterback coach, and he called me and he said he'd love to have me. And so I went out there and helped those guys for the last couple of years. And last year we had a great team. We knew that we were right there in the mix, going to have a shot for a state title. And we just had all the pieces come together. Ethan Beamish, a kid I've trained for 4 years now, moved from Hillcrest up in Simpsonville down to Columbia for a senior year to play for a state title, and competed for the job over the summer and won it. And, next thing you know, he looked up, was 9-0. Pretty incredible stat here. And there's they're right there, direct correlation of why we were state champs. He threw 19 touchdowns and 1 interception on the season.
Oh, holy moly.
That's a good quarterback coach he's got.
Yeah. Who coaches him again?
Well, it's not me. He's the one who actually did it, the players game. But that being said, when you don't turn the football over, you play good defense, and you can run the ball, there's something to be said for that. We have, and I'll be honest, this is no joke, and I've told our staff this numerous times. These guys are college-level coaches that just didn't have the connection to get into that next level. I'm telling you that I guarantee you that this staff at AC Flora is better than, I would say, 50% of the Division I staff out there. I know that because I've coached with them. I know their knowledge of the game. That, as far as teaching the run game, have not seen anybody do it better than Ken Floyd and Charlie Sewell. These are guys that they understand the running game. Man, we ran 3 run plays the entire season with power counter stretch. We just did it out of different formations, and it was hard to stop. And so, man, it was a great weekend, a great day. and the best part about it is I got to miss out watching the Kentucky game. So I didn't have to go through the pain and agony of everyone else. So I got to win a state title, didn't have to watch that, and we were all good to go.
Perry mentioned, I talked to Perry yesterday on the phone, and he mentioned to me that the wide receivers coach at AC Flores, former Clemson Tiger, Reese Curry,
okay,
as well. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
A hell of a staff there. Well, congratulations, man. What a great day for AC Flora football and the school and the coaching staff, but most importantly, right, the kids. They'll remember this day for the rest of their lives. This will for the large majority of those kids, this will be the most important, most remembered, best day of their lives until they get married, and then until their children are born. So that's just awesome stuff.
Yeah, man, I'll second that. It up until probably a few things in my own career, and then obviously getting engaged last weekend or 2 weekends ago now. It was definitely one of the top 5 moments of my life of winning a state championship as a coach, and knowing that I played a part in it. It was a special weekend.
Well, you mentioned that. I bet the 5th best moment of Shane Beamer's life was yesterday. I would probably say the first 4 were the 3 children that he helped bring into this world, with his wife, of course, and getting married to her. But Shane officially named the head football coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks, 36th in the history of the program. Perry, I know that you got to see him yesterday, you and many from the Letterman's Association. I saw Mo and Ryan and Corey, and I couldn't tell who else was in there because everybody had their masks on. It looked like maybe Jacob August and a couple of other guys got to greet him outside of the facility. And I know he pointed you out and singled you out individually for that state championship. But how do you feel today as a former QB at South Carolina who played for both Steve Spurrier and Will Muschamp, that Shane Beamer is the next gentleman to lead the future of Carolina football?
Man, I'm just beyond excited. A guy that he wants to, and I said this yesterday, you can't put a price tag on a guy that wants to wear garnet and black. Not I need it. I want to coach, because, it's just another job. This guy, he is dying to be coach at the University of South Carolina and has been for a long time. He made a comment in the press conference saying that he has recorded all of the coaches shows for the last decade. I mean,
remarkable.
Dude, you got to be out of your mind a little bit. He wants to be here.
Right.
I mean, he's I'd never met him in my life, and then when he called me out yesterday and congratulated me on the state championship game, I was like, how in the hell does this guy even know who I am when I'm wearing a mask? Then I realized that he had coached against me when he was at Georgia, and I had started twice against the Dogs, and so we had, I guess he had recognized me that way. But just a great salt of the earth kind of a guy. From the few minutes that you spend time with him, he just, talking with him, he just makes you feel like you're the only person in the room, or only person in the world that he's talking to. And that right there, man, it goes such a long way. And I think he's going to be able to recruit really well. Obviously, he did the last time he was here and brought the best players our program had ever seen into the equation. And so if he does that again and he gets some good assistants around him, guys, we'll be right back in the mix. And that's exactly competing for SEC title, SEC East championship, and ultimately the big one. You do that every year at South Carolina, but you're going to be here for a long time.
Mm-hmm. There's a picture on our screen right now, Shane in the practice facility looking up at the graphics on the wall, and many of those players he helped bring to South Carolina and help build what is deemed the greatest stretch in the history of the program from 2010 to 2013, Perry. Of course, you were part of that 2013 team. You were just a young buck, but you were there. I had Pat DeMarco on yesterday, one of my dear friends. I've known Pat a long time, and he's known Shane, of course, played for him. Had some just terrific things to say about him. Pat, of course, very tied into the Letterman's Association and things like that as well. So are you. You got to spend time around those guys yesterday. I saw Brewer out there. I need to send him a text. Brewer is just lives it, loves it, breathes it, bleeds it, garnet and black, like many of you do. What have those conversations been like over the last few days as this has come to fruition with Shane taking over the program? Not every former player supported this. Some didn't. Most did. But I understand that most all those who weren't in support of that initially certainly are now. But what have those conversations been like?
Yeah, I think just talking with the guys that knew him. For me, obviously Garcia is one of my better friends, and Steven was just saying how much he wanted him to be here, how amazing it would be to get a guy like Shane Beamer back as our head coach. I mean, he's got a lot of the same characteristics of Will Muschamp in the sense of players wanting to play hard for him. I think there are a few things that will be different, obviously, but I think that you get a coach where players can rally behind, and then now you tie in the fan base wants to rally behind him, because now everybody's, whether we win, lose, or draw right off the bat, people are going to be rooting for him because they know how much he loves the University of South Carolina. How many times in his press conference did he say, your program, I'm going to give you a program that you're proud of? It was not, I'm going to take us to new heights, and I'm going to build a program that's better than ever. He put it back into our hands. He was going to be working and serving his fans and his boosters and his alumni and his former lettermen and all of these awesome things that you would want a coach and want him to say. And so for me, he said all the right things. As a guy who is just passionate and bleeds Garnet and Black, I mean, I've never thought in the world I'd care about the school as much as I do now. You want us to do well because you want your school to be represented well. You want, we want to beat your rivals. You want to be on the national stage. You want, little South Carolina football to get back to where it was. I mean, look at Clemson. Clemson now has put South Carolina State on the map. Now you bring us into the equation again. There was nothing like having the ESPN primetime game of two top 10 heavyweight teams playing on Thanksgiving Day, when people were talking with Carolina and Clemson as they were with Ohio State, Michigan, and Auburn and Alabama. I mean, that doesn't get any better than that.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah, I mentioned yesterday to Darren. Actually, you and I talked about this as well on the phone, so I'm kind of regurgitating here. But I mentioned to Darren, Carolina fans have a coach that loves university like they do, and there's something to be said for that. That's not always the case everywhere you go. This guy truly loves South Carolina like we do. Fans, Perry, who've spent thousands and thousands of dollars and missed birthdays, skipped out on weddings and things like that to go watch Gamecock football, and they have a deep passion for it. And here comes Shane Beamer with that hope on his chest for the future of the program. Let me ask you this as an alumni, because you're tied into a few different eras, right? The Spurrier era, the Muschamp era, but you've gotten to know guys who have been in this program, guys who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s and beyond, and things like that because of the work you do and what you've done around Columbia. What would you and other former lettermen like to see moving forward specific to you? What could Shane Beamer and this staff, this program now, what could they do better to cater for those who helped build South Carolina football?
I think just, making it an emphasis to show up to Letterman's associations and Letterman's golf tournaments. And, we had an open door policy before, but really figuring out a way to where guys are really truly welcomed back. And then the other thing too, is I was talking to Mo Brown about this yesterday, is you look at Clemson, he told me Clemson and Georgia have in the 20s, number, somewhere between 20 and 25 former players working on their current staff, whether as a GA or an analyst or an assistant coach. That we have 4. We want people that want to be at the University of South Carolina. There's something to be said. It's like owning a home versus renting a home. When you're just renting a home, you don't really give a damn if you punch a hole in the wall and say, I'll fix it up, and you do a half-ass punch job in it, and you just kind of got this whatever. But when you own it and you knock a hole in the wall, you're going to do everything you can to make it go back to normal, right? So the point I'm trying to make is that when you are a USC grad, you are bleeding Garnet and Black, you're going to do everything on earth and be hell-bent on making sure our program is successful. I'm not saying the old staff didn't, but there's something to be said when you've got skin in the game. And getting a few more guys on staff that were here during those glory days is going to help.
That's an interesting point you bring up there. One of the things we've seen from Dabo Swinney over the last few years, obviously staff continuity has been key to their success, but also as coaches, and not many of them, if they've departed and gone on to other places, he's been able to promote within his program guys like Brandon Streeter. Look what he's doing up there with the quarterbacks, a guy who played at Clemson, kind of brought him in, kind of moved him up the chain. Maybe there's opportunities for like that down the stretch. What about, how does it work on like game day and stuff like that, Perry? Is there like a meeting place on game day for former football players? Like there's always going to be a tent or a room in Williams-Brice. You can always go in and just hang around with some of your former teammates and things like that. Is any of that the case right now?
They have the Letterman's Lounge, which it's not specific for football players, but they allow us to go and hang out and have dinner and hang out together. But as far as like tickets, like there's a handful of selection through the Gamecock Club that you can get, but there's nothing quite like that. I don't think that people are as passionate about that as they are as getting other players on staff. I mean, look at our fans and everybody that when they found out that Connor Shaw was coming back to work on staff at the university, I mean, people were freaking losing their marbles, man. I mean, same thing when they brought Marcus back, and you add, maybe like a Devontae Holloman. I know he was on staff here once upon a time, and I know he's the head coach at South Point, but you add a guy like that as like a defensive analyst role. You add, I don't know, Patrick DeMarco as an offensive analyst or a tight ends coach, and he's done playing. And you've got guys that want to live in South Carolina. Now you've got a couple of legends tied in with Connor as the director of player, head coach Shane Beamer, who's on fire to be here, and maybe a few other guys to join in as an analyst or GA or whatever the roles may be. Now you've got a staff full of people that are just on fire for the Gamecocks, and they're going to do whatever they can to win. I mean, you look at what Miami's tried to do by bringing back former players and having them speak at pregame meals and having them around the program. And they've hired Ed Reed down there to be Ed Reed. I mean, like, he doesn't really coach a position, but you better believe in practice he's out there, chirping with the DBs, trying to get them fired up. He's out there teaching them and showing them. He's in the film sessions. He's doing whatever he can to get Miami football back. And look at him this year. I mean, Miami's by no means got the talent they used to, but man, they're going to finish in the top 10 this year, and potentially with one loss only to the team which might end up winning the national championship, depending on how they play in these last few games. So, all that being said, there's something to be said when you've got skin in the game and you are passionate about the Gamecocks.
Perry Orth, former quarterback at South Carolina, on Twitter at Perry Orth10. QB1athletics.com, by the way, if you'd like to be trained by Perry, or down here in the Low Country, Bailey Hart as well. Or, even if you're in Florida, Stephen Garcia and others. Perry, yeah, and here comes Shane. Everything that you mentioned, Shane, obviously, he gave a bunch of examples. You already, just a moment ago, spoke about one where he used to record all the coaches' shows. I wonder if he'll keep doing that, recording himself every Sunday so they can go back and watch those.
Yeah, so he can get better with his on-camera performance. He can coach himself. Yeah.
But he has connections to obviously the Spurrier era. But when he was here, met so many involved in this program from generations prior to, and Shane is going to be able to connect a lot of that as we move forward. But it's about winning games. And I mentioned to Darren earlier, it's okay for Carolina fans to be optimistic. Don't listen to people. Don't listen to your Clemson fans who want to keep banging it over your head that they won all these national championships and we beat you 6 times in a row and yada yada. Don't listen to that crap. It's okay. Move forward. That's what Shane's doing. Move forward. Everybody jumped in Dabo's boat. You can jump in Shane's boat. Move forward. Be positive. Be energized and energetic about the program. When it comes to winning games, that's what this comes down to, Perry. What are we looking for? What is on Shane's plate over the next 8 months or so to put together a program that when they open up with Eastern Illinois, September the 4th, 2021, it'll be the best product on the field? What are they focused on in improving the football team itself?
I think a little bit more exciting. He talked about is they're going to focus on the fundamentals. They're going to focus on tackling. I think that we've tackled extremely poorly over the last 4 years. I think that's something that we can improve on. the other thing is scoring points, really trying to score. You've got to, if you want to score, you've got to try to. And I think that, sometimes college coaches get too busy in the business of getting in the weeds of the defense and trying to be too perfect and draft up the perfect play that's going to hit that one time, that's going to get you that big touchdown score. I think focusing on the offense in general, as far as taking care of the football, developing the two talented tailbacks that you have, and then you got Luke Doty. You insert him, and now he's right there in the mix as well, as far as somebody that you can build a program around. He's got all the tools that you'd want, and another guy that loves the Gamecocks.
As this change is made and as time moves forward, Perry, you were on the game. You were a quarterback at South Carolina when a coaching change was made. When Steve Spurrier resigned, Sean takes over, and then Will gets the job. There's going to be some attrition. What should Gamecock fans expect over the next few weeks or so as we start to see how the future will unfold?
Well, I think they should expect a team that's without a doubt going to play hard. I think they should expect a team that's going to be very good on special teams, and they're going to be fundamentally sound, and they're going to be exciting. I'm hopeful that they go out and hire Lincoln Riley's brother from SMU, somebody who's going to, spread the offense out and really, really force the ball down the field. I think that's what really stretches teams. And then defensively, people that, a staff that's going to get kids to go out there and fly around and play with reckless abandon. I just think that if you watch our team play over the last really 3 years, we just seemed so tense and nervous and without enthusiasm. And I don't know why that is, but I would expect that. I'm not going to say they're going to go out and win 10 and 11 games, because that ain't going to happen. And it might. I'd love it, but I just don't know if that will happen. But a team where you can see where there's growth and progression. We saw that the first 2 years of Coach Muschamp, and then it came to a halting stop. And I know for me as a fan and former Letterman, former quarterback, I want to see progression throughout the team, throughout the season. A team is well coached when they get better as the season goes along.
Is it fair to say that through the month of December, maybe even beyond that, we'll probably see some transfers and things like that, but people just let the process play out? I mean, isn't that what happens now when there's a coaching change?
Yeah, it really is. It's all about the process. It's not year one. You got to come in. You got to get to 500. That's got to be a goal. And maybe you don't announce that because you want to strive for more. But that, without a doubt, has to be the goal. 6-6 at a bare minimum. Get to a bowl game. Then from there, you start moving on. On to the next step. You look at, Luke Doty will be a sophomore. Then the next year he'll be a junior. Then the next year he'll be a senior. So again, he's a guy that you can develop a program around without having to force more freshmen onto the field. Then you insert the Gunnar Stockton kid, and you redshirt him, and you groom him to get ready to play as what he would be, I guess, a redshirt sophomore, a redshirt freshman, where he's got a couple years under his belt before he steps on the field. So there's a progression that has to take place. I think we can do it. I think our fans are understanding, especially the way that we've looked and the timeline that he's on. We just want to see teams go out there and compete and play hard. I just don't think that, we've really seen that.
Well, Ray Tanner mentioned yesterday, right before the press conference wrapped up, Will Muschamp has reached out to him as well and said, anything that I can do to help Shane Beamer in the future, I'll do it. So we'll see what happens. Perry, on that note, we'll let you run, brother. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday afternoon. A new era at South Carolina. Hopefully you'll find a way to be involved directly somehow. I'm sure in the future you'll speak with Coach Beamer again, and we'll look forward to getting you back on. Probably get you on for another couple weeks. I know we'll see what happens with the bowl game and things like that, but love your perspective, and we really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys having me on. Another good season of talking, not so much on the field, but it'll be better next year. I promise you that.
Hey, well, look, who would have thunk it? The upset over Auburn could get you into a bowl game. 2-8. Yeah. Hooray.
Yikes.
The effects of a pandemic, 2-8 bowl teams. Thanks, Perry.
See you guys.
There you go, Perry Orth, former quarterback at South Carolina. Dennis Dodd, by the way, really bad and really wrong about South Carolina in his report last week and reporting that Hugh Freeze was the leading candidate. Ray Tanner never made a major hire, yada, 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 yada. Also might be wrong about this one. He has reported that Matt Campbell will not take the Michigan job. Yeah, some folks don't think so. Jordan Strack, who's covered sports in the Toledo area, tweeted, that is 10,000% false, just blatantly wrong about Michigan. I can unequivocally tell you that is not true, period. So Dodd might be wrong again, but it does look like Matt Campbell could have his eye out there on some big jobs, including Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, who knows what the future is, but it looks like they're going to maybe offer him a contract extension, but decrease his salary and his buyout, right? Am I right about that?
So that's possible. One thing we do know that just broke about 2 minutes ago is that the game, Michigan-Ohio State, is off. Michigan's COVID numbers are too high, and they are unable to play. Maybe that was one of the reasons why a press conference featuring Harbaugh was again postponed today. I think today was the second or third postponement of that press conference. So who knows exactly what's happening, but the implications here are huge because that means Ohio State does not have the necessary games to play in the Big Ten championship game unless they can find a way to fill that slot.
Wow. And you know who was a big loser in this? A&M and Ole Miss was called off yesterday, and A&M is ranked 5th in the country. College football playoff rankings will be released tonight. That's unfortunate. They could get another game up on Ohio State if they could play. Maybe A&M and Ohio State can just play.
Bingo. I was just about to say, someone put on Twitter, JC Sherwood retweeted it, said he agrees with it. I do too. Ohio State and A&M should play this weekend.
Maybe they should just play for all the marbles.
Both conferences have a rule that you can't play outside the conference. So make an exception for each of your two teams that want to play in the playoffs. Let them play.
Try to get somebody in the playoffs.
Let them play.
Wow. Crazy stuff.
Put it on CBS. Let Carter and crew. Carter Blackburn was supposed to have the game. Ole Miss and A&M. Let them have this one.
Fascinating stuff. HolyCityDrive-In.com for this weekend's drive-in movie series, by the way, coming up on Friday night. Another Christmas movie over there, so head to HolyCityDrive-In.com, and you can be a part of it this Friday night at Patriots Point, by the way, who presents our national anthem every day at 1 o'clock. This Friday night is the 2018 version of The Grinch. Check it out, HolyCityDrive-In.com. Time for a timeout. When we return, we head to Atlanta. That's where Mike Morgan with ESPN and the SEC Network will join us right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, protected by McFadden Pest Control.
Is your old car really scary? Does it look dreadful or smell awful? Don't be frightened. There's never been a better time to trade in your spooky old car. Stokes Volkswagen just received a new shipment of the VW Atlas and VW Crossport. But here's what makes that even sweeter. Every new Atlas and Crossport is $3,000 off MSRP. Plus, every 2020 Volkswagen is available with 0% financing. That's right. You get both the huge discount and 0% financing. So if you want to play trick or treat at other dealerships, that's okay. Come see us at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or visit StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Plus tax tag includes $399.50 closing fee. Offer subject to lender approval. Expires month end.
Merry Christmas!
Keith Gunther here with McFadden Pest Control, wishing you all a happy holiday season. The only outdoors we want coming inside your home this time of year is the Christmas tree. McFadden Pest Control wants to make sure your family has a safe and enjoyable holiday season. And the best way we know how to do that is to make sure your homes are pest-free. We've been protecting the Low Country for over 40 years. Families trust us. We hope you will too. We're wishing you and your family a Merry Christmas from the entire McFadden Pest Control family. McFaddenPestControl.com.
Family Bingo Night is back. All 3 Dog and Duck locations. Every Monday from 6 to 8 is the perfect time to bring the kids, have dinner, and play bingo. They've upped the prizes with retail store gift cards, gas cards, in-house cash cards, and kid-friendly gift cards like Nintendo, pizza, App Store, and more. Thanks for supporting local businesses like the Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clements Ferry Road.
Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
That bump is... It's true, actually. There are other stations that tune in. I won't say anything else.
Inside jokes are fun jokes.
I won't say anything else. Mike Morgan joining us from his home studio in Atlanta, but he works for ESPN and the SEC Network here on a beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Hey, Mike.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Oh, just making jokes. We're good.
Inside jokes.
Yeah.
The best kind of jokes.
Yeah.
I know how those work.
I bet there were some good inside jokes that were out on the golf course. That photo that Haney threw up of you, him, and Jay and Beamer.
Pull that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I actually asked Michael what year was that? So that was 07. That was the first year of Shane. Of course, he was there 07 to 2010.
Right.
And we played in the it was probably the Spurrier, golf event that they do every year. Shane could not have been nicer, and got to know Shane fairly well. Like everybody else, I mean, it's not just after the fact talk. There's something very ingratiating about his personality, his just overall demeanor about everything. Not surprised that he was going to be a head coach. I'm only surprised it took this long, quite honestly. But, everybody takes a different path. For Tommy and Terry Bowden, it was a different path. I think Shane didn't want to just jump on whatever Group 5 opportunity there was. I think he really wanted to stay inside of marquee programs and learn from some really good people. And one thing, and this is no knock on all the other candidates, and a number of Group 5 coaches have gone on to be great Power 5 coaches, but there is nothing that can prepare you for coaching in the SEC, for example, in terms of recruiting, in terms of all the responsibilities, in terms of the competition, in terms of the politics. You're not getting that in the Sun Belt.
Right.
You're not getting that in Conference USA. Does it mean that there's a number of different pathways you can take to be a successful head coach? I'm just pointing out that while Shane's route might be somewhat unconventional, when you look at it, there's a lot of positives that do come with that.
Well, that's a really good point, and I think that the God bless all the fans, because their opinions matter sometimes. But it's one thing to look at, Mike, is there's a multitude of reasons why Ray and Bob chose Shane to be the next head coach at South Carolina. But one of the things that fans kept beating that drum was, well, he doesn't have any head coaching experience. Well, there's a reason for that. Shane spoke about it yesterday. He said, look, I didn't want to just take any other job. And then you mentioned that, all these other candidates, great candidates and great people, Billy and Jamie and and Scott Satterfield and guys like that. You spent time in the SEC. You spend time in the SEC every weekend. These people at every school. It is a different dynamic, and Shane has spent 9 years total already in this league, as opposed to all those other guys. He could have had a hand up there, even though he wasn't a head coach.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Look, you've had my my podcast cohort JC on, and he's told everybody about all the different coaches that were not a coordinator before they became a head coach. Obviously, Dabo tops that list currently. Urban Meyer, Mac Brown. There's a number of those that fit that profile. Look, today's day and age is a lot different than it was 20, 30 years ago. Let me start with this. Who do you think was the team of the 90s in college football?
Florida State.
Or Florida.
Florida State.
Yeah.
I'd go FSU. Okay.
Right.
2 national championships. I mean, Florida's right there, but I'd go FSU. Top 5, I think, every year, if I'm not mistaken. And every year they were competing for a national championship back in a system where, nowadays Florida State would have had more opportunities. Florida under Steve Spurrier would have had more opportunities in a 14 playoff. Back then it was such a ridiculous joke of a system. But anyway, that was Bobby Bowden at his best, right? Bobby Bowden didn't call any plays. Didn't call plays on offense. Didn't call plays on defense. Joe Paterno for much of his career didn't call plays on offense. Didn't call plays on defense. We're in a different time frame, and we know Dabo Swinney. as a wide receivers coach, wasn't calling plays. Everything is delegated now. Coordinators are regularly 7-figure salary guys in the SEC. There's a reason for they've never been more important. So a head coach's responsibilities are different than they were. Now, there's some of the things that still exist, but I think there's more emphasis on some of those other things that maybe your head coach 30, 40 years ago didn't want to deal with. He just wanted to follow. I'm all about X's and O's. There's my chalkboard, and here's my play, and here's my diagram, and that's changed a bit. And so you don't have to be a whiz calling plays. I think Bobby Bowden showed us that in the 90s. I think that trend has only continued. It is so much about who your coordinators are. I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't work with Will Muschamp, is that, quite frankly, he did not get the right coordinators. I have a feeling Shane Beamer, with his background and experience and connections, and spending all those years at various SEC schools, he's going to get in the front door and be able to attract some pretty good coordinators that maybe Will Muschamp quite simply wasn't able to do in his 5 years. There's that. There's the recruiting. Shane has been on the front lines. We all know the story. He's responsible for a number of the players, core players on those, on the 2010 season that made it to Atlanta, on the 2011, 12, and 13 teams that won 11 games each. He has that. And I would just circle back to this as number one. And this is what I try to get. I'm on shows about other programs as well. I was on not too long ago at a station in Tennessee talking about Tennessee. And I think in a lot of ways, Tennessee and South Carolina have a lot in common. You have to understand that with all the premier programs out there, programs like South Carolina are not necessarily a destination job. In other words, the hot coach hasn't thought in the back of his mind for the last 5 to 10 years, you know what? I like that South Carolina job. That's where I want to be. That's what I'm aiming for. That's what I'm striving for. That hasn't been the case more often than not. Mike McGee, may he rest in peace, landed on Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier. And we can argue how good Lou Holtz was or wasn't. I thought at the time the program needed an injection of enthusiasm that Lou provided. But Lou, at the time, everybody was like, the South Carolina program's a sleeping giant. They didn't do anything under Brad Scott. They didn't do anything under Sparky Woods. But now they're SEC, and they got the fans, they got the money, and Lou gravitated to that. Steve Spurrier gravitated to the fact that he wanted to be back in the SEC, and he wanted to go to a school that hadn't won before. He could have had the Alabama job. He didn't take it because he wanted to go somewhere where they hadn't won. Again, with all due respect to Mike McGee, it wasn't his charm and savvy that got Steve Spurrier to Columbia. Spurrier's destination was Columbia, regardless of the AD. Well, those two things are done now. And South Carolina, while the job has only gotten better, it's also only gotten more difficult with the ascension of Clemson and Georgia as national powers. And so how many people really was this a destination job for? And of the names that I was hearing, the only one that I knew this was truly his dream job was Shane Beamer. That matters to me. And it should matter to Gamecock fans. Doesn't mean you just give it to the guy who wants it the most. Still got to be qualified. I think Shane is plenty qualified. I think Shane has certainly paid his dues, has certainly learned a lot from key people, has certainly been on the front lines of being an assistant coach, recruiting coordinator, assistant head coach. And so all those things, while it doesn't make sense to people, or at least everybody on the outside, it does make sense to, I think, a number of people on the inside. And the more people on the outside are put a magnifying glass over it, they're like, yeah, I do get it now. I do understand why this guy was a top candidate. So that's my thoughts on it. Some people you're never going to please. There are some people that wake up every morning and their sole intention in life is to go on a message board and rip Ray Tanner. That's their prerogative. That's their they have the right to do that. But I think overall, if you're a Gamecock fan, you ought to be really proud of two things. A, the way this process went. I think all the right steps were made this time. And B, be happy with the guy you got. The only other thing I would say is no matter who you get, whether it's South Carolina, whether it's Tennessee, and I've been over all these examples with you, it's still a gamble. It's still a crapshoot. Napier would have been a gamble. Chadwell would have been a gamble. Sarkisian would have been a gamble. We don't know. Everybody thought Jeremy Pruitt was this brilliant hire 3 years ago. Now Tennessee fans can't wait to fire him. That type of list goes on and on and on throughout the country. So understand there are no guarantees no matter who you hire, but I think they got the right guy for the job.
Well, if they would have just gotten Tom Herman back in 2015, this thing wouldn't even be a conversation. Mike.
No. Not now. We'd be trying to figure out who's going to replace Herman.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to survive. It's going to be very interesting in Austin. And again, the overwhelming arrogance of that fan base, they thought they would get Urban Meyer. How could Urban say no? Well, Urban just said no.
Right.
So now where are you going to go?
Yeah, you better maybe hope it's Matt Campbell. Mike, you spend every weekend. You spend time in a different SEC facility, meeting with these coaches and the staffs and these players. That's your job. It's what you do. At South Carolina, Shane pointed out, and he's right. He's spot on. Everybody knows this is true now, that the facilities are as good here as anywhere. And Shane, Pat DeMarco, good friend of mine, friend of yours. We've known Pat a long time. Pat has mentioned multiple times on this program, he's been in and out of a ton of NFL facilities, pretty much all of them.
Yep.
Carolina's right there with all those guys, if not better than a lot of them. And Shane's been in some of the best programs in the country. Carolina's right there, if not better than a lot of those. Those are well-qualified people to make that statement. But that's not what I'm talking about. As you spend time with all these staffs every week, and this is what I want people to focus on here, not just we built all these facilities. I get that. What's inside of those? Who is inside of those facilities? Just in this last segment, Perry Orth said that Mo Brown told him, look, at Clemson and at Georgia, there's 20 to 25 guys on staff in various roles, analyst roles and things like that, former players who were invested in the program, but smart enough to do their jobs, clearly qualified for their off-field roles. Carolina has 4 of those. And all the time that you spend around the SEC and inside and outside of all these other programs, do you see that? Do you see a difference in how South Carolina's staff is built compared to some of the powers?
I don't know if I can speak specifically on the diversity or difference in analysts throughout the league. I mean, we all know the analyst thing didn't exist basically on the mainstream before Nick Saban made it cool, right?
Sure.
And of course, at Alabama, they've got more money than God to spend on football. So all these very qualified fired coaches would wind up being analysts on Nick Saban's staff. And it's just like, he's just building a powerful army. But that doesn't mean he's getting a bunch of former players. Look, I've heard this for years, and I think for a time it definitely was lacking, the reach out to some former players at South Carolina. I do know that every college out there are former players that, they feel like they want to get more love, so to speak. Like, hey, I played here, so I should get this, that, and the other. I mean, you don't hire people just because they played for you. I think overall, the attitude has changed. I mean, you heard about the legendary stories of Sterling Sharp not being allowed to go in the weight room.
Right.
Of course, there's other parts of that story that you don't hear, which is it wasn't Sterling, it was his buddies that didn't have any connection to the University of South Carolina that maybe they didn't want to have in the weight room. So I don't know. I don't know enough specifically about that. I would just tell you that there's been a financial commitment at South Carolina, not just on facilities, but on the staff, that it's never been at this level before. And I think it's only going to get there even more so with this administration. So how many former – I think they got the right guy on the staff in Connor Shaw, okay? Connor Shaw is the guy you want. He's only the most successful quarterback in program history. He bleeds garnet and black. He's a great spokesman for the program, and he doesn't walk around like, hey, you owe me because I won you some games. That's, to me, the kind of guys I want around my program. And so I think he's almost a lock to be on the staff. Not to mention he's the son of a coach. He knows a thing or two about X's and O's. I don't need just a bunch of big names with titles on the staff. I need guys that are going to go to work. You got a lot of former players at all schools that think they're just entitled to get plush jobs, whether it's being a head coach or being something else, that might be great for them, but it doesn't help you compete in the most difficult conference in the country. You need guys that actually have something to contribute, that truly have something to offer. And I think Shane will be very precise on who they add and how many people they add. I think these coordinator hires are huge, as I mentioned. But for the most part, I think, that's not the top thing that's kept South Carolina back, if you will. I think it's been a combination of things, including the coordinators, including a drop-off in recruiting. Will Muschamp, he got his second chance. It just didn't work out. Now you got a guy, fresh-faced, who's never had this opportunity, who is going to be filling to the brim with enthusiasm and anxious to turn this thing around.
Mike Morgan, ESPN, the SEC Network. What similarities do you see? But did you need to ask a question?
No, you're going exactly where I was going to go if you didn't go here.
Oh, what similarities do you see in where South Carolina is right now with the hire of Shane Beamer and where Arkansas was last year when they made the hire to Sam Pittman?
Oh, that wasn't where I thought you were going.
Oh, sorry.
I think South Carolina is in better shape than what Arkansas was. I mean, kudos to Sam Pittman. He's going to squeeze out 3 wins this year, and that's more than anybody thought that he would. And that's a tribute to a guy who, again, wasn't a coordinator, wasn't a head coach. Everybody laughed at the hire, and he won't win SEC Coach of the Year. That likely is either going to go to Dan Mullen or the other guy that nobody thought was a great hire, and Eli Drinkwitz. He's done a terrific job in Como. But Arkansas was a mess. Now they did pick up a key guy in Felipe Franks off the transfer wire, and that is going to be huge for South Carolina as well. We've never had a situation where it's going to be more wild, wild west. All these kids are going to be able to transfer, and so it's de facto free agency out there, and that you can look at that in one of two ways. You can look at that in a bad way and say, guys are going to tell some of the best players on Carolina's roster, "Oh, hey man, you didn't sign up for 2 and 8. You need to come to a winner." Or Carolina can go to guys on other teams and say, "Hey, we got PT. You want to be part of something? We're building something special here. You want to put your name on the front of something? Come to Columbia, because you're going to play right away and you're going to be part of this great turnaround in the Southeastern Conference." And that's what Shane has to sell in recruiting and the transfer market and everything else. And I think he's a pretty good salesman already. And then you'll try to get the right guys on your staff to help solidify that. But no, I mean, Arkansas, other than Rakeem Boyd, how many people could name how many returning players they had? You got guys that were walk-ons that were in that secondary and linebacking core. These weren't scholarship guys. These weren't guys part of a top 50 recruiting class. They had, in a lot of people's eyes, they had a Group 5 roster playing in the SEC. So kudos to Sam Pittman, but I think the Gamecock scenario, talent-wise, is in better shape, particularly on offense. Now, defense, they got work to do.
Yeah.
They got some serious work to do, but I think it's a better situation. And you can make the argument, for that matter, it's better than it was 5 years ago when Steve – for all the good things he did, recruiting just completely fell off a cliff. And when Will walked in there weren't much there. Right. I thought Will did a great job those first 2 years. Problem was what he was unable to do building off of that.
So what Sam Pittman has done, right? He's taken his passion and his love for Arkansas and he's won a couple games, and that's good enough right now for Arkansas.
Well, he hired 2 excellent coordinators.
Yes, but he's won a couple of games right off the bat to make you believe, you know what, this is the right hire. We are going in the right direction if we're Arkansas fans. How much time does Beamer have for the fan base, for the administration, with all the love and support that's behind him right now? How much time does he have next year, the following year, to keep that behind him if you're not seeing something better soon?
Well, look, they both said, and when I say they, I mean Shane and Ray, yesterday at the press conference, the right things. Like, hey, this is not a 5-year building project. Yeah. We expect to have results quickly. That's the we're a microwave society in general. We're a microwave society in college football for sure. You're coming off 2 and 8. You're coming off a lot of things that didn't go right. The recruiting class currently is ranked, like 90th in the country. I don't expect a ton in year 1. And I don't think they're going to go quick fix route. I really think they're going to go long-term route. Now, that's not to say they're not going to try to win more games every year. They are. But I also think they're going to have the eye on the future with everything they do. Otherwise, I just think it'll fall flat. I think you really have to build a foundation and alter some things the way they have been done versus the way you want them done now in Columbia. I've said this before too. I mean, what makes this job so good and also so difficult at the same time, we've talked about this so good. Facilities have improved dramatically over the last 5 years. I don't even recognize when I walk around that football stadium. And again, when we do a game, we go in the bowels, we see the weight room, we go to the assistant coach's offices, what have you. It's ridiculously good. I mean, they don't take a back seat to many in the country. The fan support, it's still outstanding. I mean, they're disgruntled. I get it. I understand. It's been a rough few years in a couple of sports. I happen to think baseball is going to be good this year. I happen to think Frank has one of his better basketball teams this year. But staying with football, I get the frustration. But what makes this job so difficult is that what Steve Spurrier didn't have to deal with, what Lou Holtz didn't have to deal with, what obviously Brad Scott didn't have to deal with. Georgia was good. Clemson was sometimes good, but they weren't premier programs during those times. You now have your two closest big-time rivals that are basically top 10 programs perennially. In the case of Clemson, they're in the playoff more often than they're not. In the case of Georgia, they had two golden opportunities to win a national championship, and they've taken a minor step back, but they're still really, really good, much better than they were for much of Mark Richt. And then you add to the fact that finally Florida has a coach that can walk and chew gum at the same time and knows what he's doing and can call offensive plays, which they haven't had in a decade there. And so Florida is now a factor. And then there's Missouri, and then there's Kentucky, and eventually you think Tennessee might get it together. So this job to me has never been more difficult from that standpoint. The schedule is just daunting, to say the least. And that's the challenge of whoever was going to take the job. And I guarantee you, all those coaches that were named in the rumor mill, when they were talking to Jimmy Sexton, or whoever their agent was, they were looking at it and they were saying, well, here's the good, and here's something else. How am I not going to get fired in 4 or 5 years at that job? Because the first few years, this is probably a loss, this is probably a loss, this is probably a loss. I'm going to be out-talented in half my games right off the bat. They look at that kind of thing. And I talk about this on the podcast all the time. It's not just about dollars and facilities. Coaches look at things as path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. What job is not going to have me fired in 3, 4, 5 years? Because nobody wants to go through that. And so you have to be a little bit fearless to take on a job like this. There are some jobs in the SEC, without mentioning them. You can go 6-6, 7-5, 5-7, and there's not going to be this rabid fan base that wants you fired the next day. A lot of them have that. A few of them don't. South Carolina has now gotten to that point because they've tasted it under those 4 years of Spurrier, what it's like to be good. And so coaches look at that kind of thing, and they know it. Columbia is a very difficult job. You take the 4 years away from Spurrier during that time, and what do you have? So everybody out there's got money right now. This whole notion that we could have just outbid this team. Every Power 5 school has a bunch of money. You're not just going to get who you want based on money.
Can we go over the 2-minute mark or the
Sure.
2-hour mark for a minute?
Sure.
Mike, do you have a few minutes left?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, you're just too good to cut off right at 2
Well,
o'clock.
That's debatable, but I'll take that.
Well, luckily we control what we do around
We
here.
can make our own choices on
I was going to say, you guys are kind of your own boss, are you not?
Absolutely.
I mean, this is, you got no rules.
Nope, none.
I don't.
I envy you.
I don't. Never mind. I don't need to say what I'm going to say. Never mind.
We've already taken 2 or 3 solid shots today.
Congratulations, everybody! You're going to get some JBGOT here with Mike Morgan. Coach Tanner, Mike, you've known Ray now for over 20-something years.
I've 20 years on the nose. Yeah.
20 years on the nose. There you go. I've known Coach Tanner for 16 years. I don't know of many people that I respect more than Coach Tanner, even though he ended up cutting me at South Carolina. I still respect him and love him. I think that he has been people look at Ray. We've talked about this before. I'm not going back down this rabbit hole, but they look at some of his hires like Chad and Will and specifically, and they think that he's just done a terrible job, which is so far off. It's ridiculous. But this job specifically that he just did, this search here, let's marry this conversation with the facts. They hired not a search firm at all. They hired a consultant to help mitigate leaks in the search and to do background checks. That's what Chad Chatlos was hired for. He was in charge of this search. Bob certainly had his hand in the cookie jar. This was Ray's decision to make and be as thorough as he could be. Ray had more references than you could ever possibly dream of, and I can't even probably 100 of them to go in on with whom he was going to hire. At the end of the day, I know that they threw the book at Matt Campbell, which, Mike, you have to do that if you have an open job right now.
That's this year's Tom Herman.
That's right. You got to throw the book at him, and they did, and he didn't bite, and that's okay. After that, though, they had a list here of 5 guys, if not more than that, who, if they offered the job to, I don't care what Billy's statement and Scott's statement were, if they offered the job, all 5 of those guys would have accepted this position. How do you grade Coach Tanner and his handling of this coaching search?
I think it was spot on. I think the experience of 5 years ago definitely helped. He did not have a flawless search 5 years ago. Although, as I pointed out many times, after Georgia got nervous about losing Kirby and they fire Rick and they take away Kirby, and Herman wanted Texas and Lincoln wasn't leaving Oklahoma, what were you left with, honestly? There weren't a whole lot of hot Group 5 names. You go back and you look at who was available and who would actually come to Columbia. Again, you have 2 factors as an AD. Who are the names that you covet? Who are the names that are actually take the job? And those 2, for a lot of fans at every school, they suffer with reality when it comes to that. They absolutely have a blind spot to the fact that not every coach wants that job. When I heard Matt Campbell's name, and I don't blame Ray going for him, I was like, there's no way.
Right.
Matt Campbell is going to be offered NFL jobs, Texas. If Michigan opened up, he'd be offered Michigan. He's in a pick of the litter situation. And to go back to my point, and I've done games in Ames, Iowa. I get it. Like, it's not SEC in terms of facilities and all that. But you know what? They got money. They got money. They can pay him $3, $4, $5 million a year if they want to. And if he stays, you watch. They will. They will do it. So you go after, that's your, kind of dream candidate, and you try and get him. After that, you got to make a calculated decision. It goes back to what I said earlier. Do you want the guy who this has been his dream job and he knows the ins and outs of this program and what it's going to take? Or do you want to get the hot flavor of the month Group 5 coach? I defend. It's funny. You guys were watching the Louisiana game, right? Against
App State.
App State.
I'm sorry?
App State.
App State, yeah. I wanted to say Coastal. Coastal was playing BYU.
Yeah.
And people started ripping Napier because of the intentional safety. And we could debate that play all day long. I don't really have an interest in doing that. Bottom line is they won the game. And I sent out a tweet saying, for those that are crucifying Billy Napier over that decision, you're burying the lead. The guy took over a program that had 3 straight losing seasons, and he's about to win like a 3rd straight divisional title, and has won a bowl game and has given that program credibility. Okay. And it got 1 million, retweets and whatever, and people liked it. And then unfortunately, some Gamecock fans took that as, well, that's Mike saying that's who the next coach should be. That wasn't my point at all. My point was Billy Napier has done a good job. Okay. Shane Beamer is a different kind of candidate, and I sent that tweet out as well, and I've talked about it on the podcast. I could make a case for either one of them, okay? I can make an absolute, and I can poke holes in every candidate, every single one. I can poke holes in it and tell you why you shouldn't hire them. So to pretend like Billy Napier was far and away the best candidate, no. That Chadwell was far and away no. If Louisiana loses that game on a bad safety, then a lot of people are saying, you don't want to hire this guy.
Right.
If Coastal gets blown out by BYU, see what happens when they play a stronger team. There's going to be a Billy Napier next year, or some Sun Belt school, or Mountain West school, or Conference USA school. Yep. They're always out there. And there's always going to be a hot coordinator. At some point, I think South Carolina had to think outside the box a little bit. And to me, Shane Beamer was the perfect outside the box category. And I really don't even think it's that far outside the box. I think Shane could have had a head coaching job a while ago. But no, I think, yes, I've known Ray for 20 years. Make of that what you will. That's not to sit here and tell you that I think Ray has been flawless in everything he's ever done. It's ridiculous. But I think this was handled right. I think they got the right guy. And if it doesn't work out, then, people will crucify Ray again. The fact of the matter is, if you had some glorified fundraiser as your AD, as some people might want, let me tell you what that person is going to do. Much like an Eric Hyman, they're going to pick up the phone and call a search firm, i.e. Eddie Fogler, and they're going to say, give me 5 names. I don't want to make this hire. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to get 5 names, and then you're going to talk to the board, because the board has to get their piece in at every school. And then you're going to, let's go with this guy. That's what a lot of ADs do. There's no, and I've made the point on maybe this pod show, or I know I've made it on the podcast. An elite AD in the 90s in the SEC was by no question Jeremy Foley. Mm-hmm. From early 90s to 2000s, the guy won multiple national championships. He was considered, like, if you had AD of the year in the SEC awards, Jeremy Foley would have racked up a lot of trophies. He made 3 of the worst football hires in school history in Will Muschamp, Ron Zook, and Jim McElwain. So why am I saying that to pick on Jeremy Foley? No, I think Jeremy Foley was brilliant. But Jeremy Foley made 3 crucial mistakes because all these guys are doing a little bit of guesswork. They just are. And you mean to tell me Ray Tanner doesn't know what a good coach looks and sounds like? Of course he does. You think he's not qualified to interview coaches? He's more qualified than some of the people running athletic departments right now who just farm it off to some agency to make it for you. But does that mean he's going to make the right hire every time? No, of course not. And Will Muschamp will always go down as the coach. Did not work out. It for 2 years it did, but overall it did not work out. This coach, I believe, will. I believe Mark Kingston's going to have success in Columbia. He didn't hire Frank Martin, and if it doesn't work out with Frank, he'll make a basketball hire. And I think he's just as qualified as any other AD in the SEC to make that hire. This whole notion that Ray is not qualified because he's a former baseball coach is ridiculous. He was an associate AD at NC State. He wanted to be an AD the first time around when they hired Eric Hyman. I think most people know that by now. Mm-hmm. He's always been sharp and savvy. If you know the man, he's got a mind for business and administration. So he didn't just get the job as a gift for winning 2 national championships. He absolutely knows what he's doing. He does so many things behind the scenes in the way of fundraising, in the way of shaking hands and trying to hear everybody out and improving facilities and making sure you don't go on probation and doing this and all the things. He has been top line in all that. But in today's day and age, you're judged by a couple of things: who you hire and who you fire. And so Will Muschamp will go down as a minus for a lot of people in the checkmark category, and that's fair. Now you see what he's going to be able to do with Shane Beamer. But I think that the process was spot on. And I think they got the best guy for this specific job. No knock on the other candidates, but I think at this particular time, for this particular program, Shane Beamer made all the sense in the world.
Final question, Mike. Obviously, you spent plenty of time in Columbia, and you still continue to spend plenty of time in Columbia when you're able to call baseball, basketball, and football games in the capital city of South Carolina. What do you envision the future of this program looking like? Just as you've seen it the last 5 years, you know what it was like under Steve, you know what it was like under Lou. What type of program will the Gamecocks have, let's say, over the next year or two as Shane Beamer starts to put his stamp on it?
Well, first off, Shane didn't hit a home run in the press conference yesterday. He hit a grand slam.
Oh, God. He was 5 for 5 with 5 of those.
Goodness gracious.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the kind of thing, like, again, Ray looks into the eyes of somebody like that, and he's got, I know firsthand, he's got a real good BS detector.
Yeah.
Like if a player got in trouble and he lied, Ray would see right through you. So when Shane says that stuff, it's not just coach speak. I think he is honest about everything he said yesterday. And so if you're the Gamecock fan base, if you weren't pumped by that, I mean, I don't know, you might stick with your guns. I think this guy should have been the coach. I think we should have gone after that guy. I still believe Urban Meyer would have come here if we made him the right offer.
Right.
At the end of the day, I think the fan base, which is terrific. I have a big spot in my heart for that fan base. They are going to be pumped up about football again. And it hasn't been that way the last couple of years. Attendance has suffered. Obviously, this year's unique, but even before that, attendance has suffered, enthusiasm has suffered, morale has suffered. I think all of that you just hit the reset button on all of that, and it's in good shape. And people, I think most fans will be realistic about this is not going to happen overnight. We're not winning 11 games anytime soon. But by golly, there's going to be improvement year by year by year. I think the fan base will be more invested. I'm not talking about financially. It's a very well-funded program. But I think there's an enthusiasm that is going to be infectious that hasn't been there in a while. So that's number one. Williams-Brice will be packed. God willing, we're done with a pandemic. And people will be pumped up about how they see Gamecock football. I think in a lot of ways, let me say this. The first 5 years of Steve Spurrier, I was there.
Yep.
And it wasn't going great. Okay. They won one game. They were a few games over 500. People were questioning whether Junior was calling the plays or not. And I think a lot of Gamecock fans said, why do we want this guy whose whole career is based on what he did at Florida? And they never really saw Steve as one of theirs. Well, then eventually he started winning, and there's like, we love Steve, Gamecocks all the way. I think they never looked at Will in that light. I think they always looked at Will as the guy who played defensive back at Georgia, failed at the University of Florida as a head coach, and was there in Columbia because it was the best job available at the time. I think in the case of Shane, they look at Shane Beamer as this is one of our own.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is Gamecock thick and through, thick and thin, and he knows this program inside and out and truly wanted this job. So I think there'll be a lot more good vibes going on there. Now, look, we all know it's a win and loss business. The good vibes only last so long. But I don't know. I just have a weird feeling if he gets the right talent in place, and I'm very confident he's going to get the right staff, which I thought Will lacked for a lot of his time there. I just have a feeling that Shane's going to do good things. And if you're realistic about how difficult this job is right now, you'll be behind him. You'll be happy about it, and you'll feel good about where the program is 5 years from now. That's my vision. I could be wrong, but that's just what I see right now.
It's certainly intriguing to want to know what the future will look like at South Carolina. Yesterday, he mentioned that his father will be around. I don't know in what capacity, but he'll be hanging around. I've got a feeling you'll probably see Steve Spurrier pop in from time to time in Columbia as well. He mentioned his relationship with Sylvester Croom, the first African-American head coach in SEC history, and things like that. This guy has support out there like we all dream of having in whatever profession that we are in, Mike. And now we've started to see, I know that leading into the hire, there were some that were questioning this hire, not just within the fan base, but there are some others who work for other networks that don't need to be named. And then there were some that just put out horrible reports about it.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Somebody needs to give that guy a roadmap on what's actually going on.
I mean, dude, what
Good Lord.
Wow.
I mean, that's for a major company
Yeah.
And well, it goes to show you a lot of these guys, and I've talked about it before, these are national guys. And if they don't get to report on things that are overwhelmingly negative about the athletes being manipulated, exploited, there shouldn't have been football in the fall during a pandemic. We're sacrificing the safety of these kids over the mighty dollar. Like, they're real good at writing those columns.
Right.
And they're real good about writing columns about, the female soccer player that hits a squib kick.
Right.
But that's in their comfort zone. And that's what they all talk about when they get together for beers at a convention. But when it comes to hard news, oh my goodness, the reporting. Thank goodness for people like Bruce Feldman.
Yes.
There are some good ones. Bruce Feldman, Andy Staples. I mean, these guys, Chris Lowe of ESPN.
Yeah.
These guys are top notch. But you got some other people. They would just rather write stories that really have little to do about the sport. But that's their hook. They tell you, I'm a college football writer or reporter, but really they're more about something else. And that's unfortunate. I think it's a bit of an injustice to fans out there who just want good information and fair opinions on the sport.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and once Coach Muschamp was dismissed, I mean, Darren will tell you, I mean, day in and day out around here, I was hammering this to people. We both were.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to your local sources. Mike, you and I have the same friends. We know who these guys are and girls, and we know what they do, and we know who they talk to, and we know how truthful they are. And it was like, look, the South Carolina job is not the Texas job to some of these major writers. It's not the Michigan job. It's not the Alabama job. It's not one of their blue blood jobs. So they don't really care about it. They're going to get the hearsay, and they're going to run with it. The people that care about this job and that care about what's going to happen with it are right here in this state.
Yeah.
Listen to these people. And they hammered it, and they were right. All of them were right. Every one of them. They were all right throughout the entirety of its process. And what we've seen, too, Mike, now since Shane has been announced as the hire, well, I'd say since the news started trickling out late Saturday night that it was Shane, we have seen a lot of the national folks who actually know Shane and understand his family, where he's been, what he's done. Tim Brando. For instance, guys like that who have started to voice their pleasure and their support and excitement for South Carolina, and saying, you hammered it. Ray hammered this. They hammered it. Great job, Gamecocks. You're in a good spot moving forward. And those are the voices that matter, and I hope people will continue to listen to them.
It's a great point. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you, when I first heard Shane's name, and this was months ago, by J.C. Sherbert, again, who's all over it, bigspur.com. I'll give my my podcast partner in crime a plug.
Oh, yeah, J.C. and more.
It didn't register right away that this was a great candidate to me.
Yeah.
I had to really take a deep dive and say, okay, what's the thinking on this? And the more I looked at it, and the more I compared it to the other candidates, and the more I looked at where this program is and what this program is, I said, yeah, bright light. I get it. This is like so many other unconventional hires in college football lately that have worked. I get why you could see this could work, and this is the right guy for this job right now. I get it. Like, but right away, I mean, when I first heard the name, I was like, Shane Beamer. I love Shane, but I don't know. Is that really? And then I had to, like I said, I had to really do a deep dive, and I was like, oh yeah. Now I get it.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what it was. That's exactly what it was. And there's countless examples of hires that have been made in the last 10 years that have worked, and everybody said, that's the best we can do. And then there's countless of hires that everybody thought was a slam dunk and fell flat on their you-know-what. Mm-hmm. So my advice to Gamecock fans would be embrace it, because you've got a guy who loves the program, who's got a lot of good background, and absolutely loves the job.
Right.
This is not just a pit stop for him. This is what he's wanted. To me, that means something.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm right there with you. I was questioning it and even hearing it for weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, okay, I hear what you're saying. And then really what put it over the top was seeing him tear up, thinking about an Easter egg hunt in Williams-Brice Stadium. Yeah. I mean, if you can't figure out how much it means to him, then I don't know what to tell you.
That matters. First time I heard Ed Orgeron's name for LSU, I snickered.
Yeah.
Well, I get it now. I know they're having a rough year, but he won a natty, for crying out loud. No, the people don't want to hear about the Dabo story. It's been told a million times. I mean,
but
nobody thought that was a good hire.
Yeah, but it's true though, and we were talking about that earlier today on the program. Like, take Steven Garcia. Believe it or not, I'm going to say this. Take Steven Garcia's advice from a couple of weeks ago on our show. And don't look at crap on social media. Ignore it. Like, oh, that's what Clemson people are doing. There's an upstate radio host who's been around a long time. I can't believe he still has a job. Who literally said that Shane Beamer is the Brown.
He's throwing bows today.
I don't care.
He's throwing elbows today.
I don't. Look, some of these people I just have no more use for. I just don't. They don't affect my life, and I could care less.
And we don't have a boss who's going to care.
No. I mean, unless I fire myself, nothing's going to happen. But he literally put something out there. I just happened to see it because somebody retweeted it. I don't even follow the guy. That Shane Beamer was the brown on the brown side of of lettuce that you just put ranch dressing over, and you just have to eat it. That's how you make it taste good, or something like that. I'm like, well, then Dabo Swinney would have been like the oldest garden that nobody had touched in 5 years. I mean, nobody his home fan base didn't want him, and they sure as hell didn't want him after 2013 when he lost for the 5th time in a row to South Carolina.
Right.
But to Dabo's credit, just like I loved what he said yesterday, because he reached out to Shane and congratulated him. And I loved what Dabo said. Dabo said to Shane, forget everybody else, build it from the inside out. And that's what he did at Clemson. He believed in it. People bought into it, and look what they've done. And maybe Shane can do the same.
As nice a guy as Shane is, and I know Gamecock fans don't want to hear this, but as nice a guy in my encounters with him as Dabo is, to be a successful head coach nowadays, you got to have a little bit of blank you in you.
Yeah.
And I mean that with your fans.
Yep.
You don't show that publicly because you don't want to, get them against you right away. But you can't let them, you can't let the negative noise dictate policy of what you do. You just have to tune it out. And that's harder to do now than ever with social media and talk radio. And it's difficult, but you have to have a little bit of blank you, like, you know what? Thank you, sir. I respect your opinion. And then you utter under your breath, but I know what the hell I'm doing, and you don't.
Yeah.
And I think you have to have a lot of that. You have to have some of that. And you also have to have knowledge and acumen to back it up. But again, I think Shane's got that. I really do.
All right. Before I let you run, I actually want to just ask you a football question. Yesterday, the Doak Walker Award released their semifinalists, and Kevin Harris wasn't on that list. Remarkably, he's 3rd in the country in rushing. He wasn't on that list. But I went back and looked at the original list, Mike, and he wasn't on that one either, which is not shocking. He wasn't on anybody's radar.
No.
Is that one of those lists that they just don't update it throughout the year? Just if you're on it, you're on it, and that's where they go. Do you know?
I can't speak specifically to that.
Okay.
The preseason lists are based purely on reputation that
Right.
guys have done in the past. And then they keep narrowing the list. I mean, I've got enough responsibility trying to be a.
Did we lose Mike?
I don't know where Mike just went.
Oh no. We went over time and lost Mike. What?
I see him. He's frozen on my end.
Oh gosh, no. Come back, Mike. Come back and see us.
I don't know what happened there.
That's okay. Well,
Is he gone?
He might be. I asked that question. I can't hear him. I asked that question because I didn't see him on the original list, and I know oftentimes these football lists will be updated throughout the season as players perform and things like that. But he's not a semifinalist. He's 3rd in the nation in rushing. So I just thought it was interesting. I'm not mad about it, but just figured I would. Figured I'd bring that up. All right, just got a text from Mike. His computer did die. It looks like it wasn't plugged in. So we'll say goodbye to him on that. But that segment was brought to you by Stuart Wingo, 803-319-1777. He's in Columbia, South Carolina, 803-319-1777. Stuart Wingo has been one of the best in this state in handling mortgages for a long time. I know that he handles Mike's specifically, and he's done it a couple of times, and others. And so, Stuart, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, obviously. And our friend BP Skinner as well, who dresses Mike. He does a nice job. So you couldn't tell today, but he does dress him quite well.
especially in the comfort clothes.
Yeah, sorry if I offended anybody today, but I mean, look,
No, you're not.
when you say things like that, you have the right for people to come back and say things to you. That's what happens.
It's not like you're offending anyone. You're saying your opinion. You're allowed.
Yeah, just like Lettuce Guy did.
By the way, brown lettuce, it doesn't matter what you put on it. It's still disgusting.
Yeah, well, that's brown lettuce boy for you. Thanks to David Cloninger, Perry Orth, and Mike Morgan. I'll say bye, Mike. Okay, bye. Thanks. There you go. Tomorrow, J.C. Sherbert. We've got a bunch more planned this week. We continue to look at this hire, but we will dive much more into what is going on elsewhere outside of Columbia. I promise you, all of you that are anxious for that, we're back in it tomorrow here on JB and Goldwater. Thanks to Darren. Have a terrific Tuesday afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow on the JB. It's National Brownie Day, by the way. Eat a few.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. See you on the JB and Goldwater show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.